Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is part 1 of our story. If you like this what if story and want to see part 2, let me know in the comments below. Before we start, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video with your friends. Also, check the description for more great content and my playlist. This story was posted by 𝐼𝐼𝐷994 on Wattpad. Now let's start. Quirks, meta abilities, and mutations were terms used to describe the emerging superpowers in humanity. Some individuals could manipulate elements, while others exhibited strength that seemed impossible. However, only a select few possessed powers deemed legendary. Over time, these abilities grew and evolved, leading to the current generation inheriting their quirks. Izuku Yagi, a boy often regarded as below average by his peers, led a relatively ordinary life. He enjoyed spending time outdoors, drawing, and playing with friends from preschool. Yet, having All Might as a father meant that normalcy was a challenge, no matter how hard one tried. Despite being the son of Toshinori Yagi, a man with hair as bright as the sun, Izuku's appearance was strikingly different. His hair was as white as snow, and his vibrant blue eyes seemed to capture the essence of the sky. 𝐒𝐮𝐬 Yagi, his mother, initially worried that her son might have inherited a peculiar genetic condition. However, her fears were alleviated on the day of his birth when the doctor assured her that he was perfectly healthy. This reassurance allowed the couple to embrace their new roles as parents to 2 healthy children, the other being a girl born just 3 minutes after her brother. On a quiet Monday morning, Izuku lay on the floor of his room, using a comic book his father had brought back from America as a makeshift pillow. The comic featured a superhero who, despite being from the stars, embodied kindness that could touch even the most ungrateful souls. As he relaxed, his sister, Izumi Yagi, entered the room, clutching a small rabbit toy she had received from their mother. She expressed her longing to play outside, urging Izuku to join her. However, Izuku, sounding tired, explained that he needed to rest due to a headache that had kept him awake the previous night. Izumi, slightly puzzled, shrugged and decided to go play with Katsuki, inviting him to join them when he felt better. Before she left, Izuku cautioned her not to touch the door frame, warning her about the risk of getting a splinter. Surprised by his concern, Izumi complied, beginning to view her brother as something of a mystery. There were moments during their games of tag when she felt an unseen barrier preventing her from touching him, while he effortlessly caught her despite her superior stamina. This led her to ponder whether he had awakened a quirk. As Izumi headed to the park, 𝐒𝐮𝐬 approached her, curious about Izuku's absence. When informed that he was resting due to a headache, 𝐒𝐮𝐬 decided to check on him. She knocked on his door and entered to find him still on the floor, looking troubled. Concerned, she asked if he was okay. Izuku explained that his head hurt and that he was experiencing strange visions filled with information. 𝐒𝐮𝐬, intrigued, asked if he was experiencing sensory overload. Izuku admitted he didn't know what that meant, but he could perceive details about his surroundings that others couldn't. For instance, he accurately identified the color of her shirt without seeing it. Amazed by his abilities, 𝐒𝐮𝐬 felt compelled to learn more about her son's powers. After helping him up, she decided to take him to a quirk specialist at Jaku General Hospital. There, Izuku underwent several tests focusing on his eyesight and any additional abilities. During the examination, a doctor accidentally dropped a scalpel, and they discovered that Izuku could instinctively create a protective barrier around himself. After several hours, 𝐒𝐮𝐬 and Izuku sat in the doctor's office, where a man with peculiar gear-shaped goggles approached them. Dr. Garaki introduced himself and apologized for the delay, explaining that they needed to conduct thorough assessments. 𝐒𝐮𝐬 reassured him that she didn't mind the wait as long as her son was okay. Dr. Garaki confirmed that Izuku exhibited extraordinary eyesight beyond what was normal for a child. Additionally, he had shown the ability to create a repulsive force field for protection. 𝐒𝐮𝐬 was taken aback by this revelation. Dr. Garaki inquired about her and her husband's quirks, noting that 𝐒𝐮𝐬 was a 4th-generation quirk user. She explained that while she could float small objects, her husband possessed a range of superhuman abilities, including enhanced strength and speed. Dr. Garaki acknowledged that this background helped explain some of Izuku's abilities but noted that the connection between his eyesight and the ability to manipulate repulsive forces might be due to a mutation. Typically speaking, it is impossible for the human eye to perceive repulsive forces. Therefore, the hypothesis was that the boy's eyesight had been augmented to actually perceive such forces. The mother expressed concern about her son's headaches from eye strain and asked if there was a way to alleviate it. The doctor began to think and proposed a solution. Since the boy could not reduce his eyesight, the best course of action would be to limit his vision. He explained that the boy's condition was the opposite of those who needed glasses to see better. To reduce his eyesight, the doctor recommended using something to slightly obstruct his vision, like a cloth covering or darkened glasses. The mother inquired if this would negatively affect her son, to which the doctor reassured her that it would not. With a covering, he would likely see at a normal level, given that he could see things in greater detail without obstruction. As they prepared to leave, Dr. Garaki informed them that the boy's powers would likely evolve over time, suggesting that he should receive training to properly control his abilities. A quirk like that could be dangerous in the hands of a child. He encouraged them to go home and rest. The mother thanked the doctor and mentioned that she had another child. When asked if the other child had shown signs of awakening a quirk, she replied that her daughter was just a normal child for now. The doctor then asked if the boy had thought of a name for his quirk. However, the boy remained silent, unsure of what name to give it. The mother suggested they could come up with a name later, acknowledging that it was a lot for him to process. The doctor agreed, looking forward to their next visit. After leaving the hospital, they arrived home, where the mother prepared food while the boy sat at the table drawing, wearing a sleep mask that his mother had given him. His father, who had come home early from work, greeted his wife with a kiss. He explained that he had been delayed due to a villain causing trouble at the store. The mother reassured him that it was all right, stating that a hero must do what a hero must do. As the father approached his son, he noticed the sleep mask and asked what it was for. The boy explained that it was a mask given to him by his mother. The mother then explained that earlier, the boy had complained of a headache, prompting her to take him to a quirk specialist, where they discovered he had awakened his quirk. The father was astonished to learn that his son could manipulate repulsive forces and create a barrier around himself. The doctor had also mentioned that the boy's abilities would grow over time, which filled the parents with pride. Excited about the news, the father suggested they prepare something to celebrate. Over the next few hours, they baked a modest chocolate cake for the boy. While he occasionally helped, he mostly enjoyed tasting the chocolate cake mix. Eventually, the boy's sister arrived home, noticing the joyful atmosphere and asking what was happening. The mother excitedly informed her that her brother had manifested his quirk. The sister was thrilled and inquired about the cake flavor, expressing her preference for strawberry. The mother explained that they had chosen chocolate, and the sister playfully pouted but was still eager for cake. After finishing dinner, the family enjoyed the cake together. The sister remarked on the deliciousness of the cake while the boy smiled in response. She expressed her anticipation for awakening her own quirk one day and promised to make the greatest strawberry cake when that time came. The father laughed, looking forward to seeing what quirk she would awaken. In the days that followed, the sister grew excited at the prospect of developing her own quirk. However, as she turned 5, anxiety began to creep in. She had heard stories of late bloomers, children who awakened their quirks around her age. Her worries intensified until one day, when her father took her to a quirk specialist, she received news that would stay with her for a long time. The doctor informed her father that she was quirkless. The father was taken aback, questioning if there was something wrong since she had reached the age where she should have shown signs of a quirk. The doctor explained that based on their records, she should have exhibited traits of one of her parents' quirks, but after reviewing her X-rays, he did not believe she would develop one. When superpowers first began to emerge, numerous research studies were conducted, leading doctors to discover a connection between the bones of a person's foot and their likelihood of developing a quirk. A doctor presented an X-ray that revealed the pinky toe had 2 distinct joints, which caused Toshinori to maintain a stoic expression upon hearing the explanation. Individuals with powers typically have only 1 joint in their pinky toes, indicating their bodies have evolved into a more streamlined version of the human form. The X-rays of his daughter showed she had 2 joints in her pinky toes, similar to about 20% of the general population. Based on the available research, it was concluded that his daughter was unlikely to develop a quirk. Toshinori acknowledged the information and thanked the doctor before leaving with Izumi. For some time, Izumi remained silent, disregarding the attempts of others to comfort her, including Izuku, who saw no reason to think less of her. Although a hint of jealousy lingered in her heart, she did not blame Izuku for her quirkless status. After all, she had no evidence to support such a claim. Despite her condition, she managed to lead a relatively normal life. While others looked down on her for lacking a quirk, she remained indifferent. However, as time passed, her jealousy began to grow, even if she kept it hidden. She questioned why she had to endure this struggle, why she did not possess a quirk, and why Izuku was the only one blessed with a power. This jealousy reached a breaking point when, at 6 years old, a significant event occurred that led Izumi to a realization. One day at school, when some children attempted to attack her with a stick, Izuku stepped in front of her, defending her from their aggression while they snickered among themselves. One of the boys taunted Izuku, implying that he would enjoy hitting him with a stick. Another child pointed out that Izuku's quirk would simply repel their attacks. The taunter dismissed this, claiming he just needed to wait until Izuku could no longer maintain his barrier. In response, Izuku suggested they even the odds and asked the bullies to drop their sticks. When they refused, he decided to take action. With a wave of his hand, one of the boys was suddenly pulled away from the group and slammed against a nearby tree. The other 2 panicked and fled, dragging their friend along with them. Izuku realized he had gone too far and should have kept his ability under control. He checked on Izumi, asking if she was okay. She was taken aback and asked what he had just done. Izuku explained that he had recently discovered he could manipulate forces of attraction and repulsion. He felt a bit overconfident and had used his ability to intervene, but he acknowledged that he should have waited until he had better control. He intended to apologize to the boy's parents later, but he felt the boy deserved to apologize too, considering he had been bothering Izumi. He expressed relief that she had not been hurt and offered her a hand to help her up. However, this gesture only fueled Izumi's anger. She slapped his hand away and shouted at him, expressing her frustration. She insisted that she was not helpless, despite being younger, and accused him of only saving her out of pity. She declared that she did not care about being quirkless and vowed that one day she would surpass him. With tears streaming down her face, she ran away from her brother, leaving Izuku confused and wondering why she had reacted that way. As Izumi ran, a singular thought consumed her mind, creating a rift between them. She believed Izuku had stolen her potential quirk. Following their confrontation, the relationship between Izumi and Izuku grew distant. Whenever Izuku attempted to engage with her, she would shut him out. When he offered her snacks, she would dismiss them, claiming she was not interested. Eventually, Izuku came to believe that Izumi wanted nothing to do with him. Accepting her apparent disdain, he decided to avoid bothering her further, only interacting during family meals. This dynamic persisted for the next few years, with Izumi dedicating herself to training her body and mind daily, while Izuku tried to enjoy life as best he could, taking breaks on Saturdays to appreciate the outdoors. On a particular Sunday, at the age of 10, Izuku wandered through a small park, admiring the swaying leaves of a nearby tree. He found beauty in nature and felt grateful for the peaceful walk. However, while he was distracted, he noticed a muscular man and a boy around his age engaged in specialized training. The man was teaching the boy how to turn while using their speed quirk, which involved car-like engines attached to his calves. As the boy activated his quirk and sped forward, his brother panicked, realizing Izuku was in the way. The older man shouted a warning to Izuku, urging him to move aside to avoid injury. Instead of fleeing, Izuku activated his quirk, anticipating the collision and planning to defuse the situation. When the boy collided with him, he found himself suspended in midair, unable to move until his engines powered down. Izuku addressed the boy, inquiring if he was still in the early stages of training his quirk. The boy, named Tenya, responded stiffly, confirming his novice status. Izuku reassured him that he was in the same boat. In certain areas, After a few minutes of calming down from the earlier incident, the two brothers began to enjoy some orange juice. Tenya offered a can to Izuku as a gesture of gratitude for stopping him and as an apology for nearly putting him in danger. He bowed deeply, expressing his remorse for acting recklessly and risking Izuku's safety, and asked for forgiveness, though he understood if Izuku didn't want to grant it. Izuku, however, took a relaxed approach, assuring Tenya that it was fine. Tenya was taken aback by Izuku's laid-back demeanor, especially considering he had just narrowly avoided a collision with someone moving at high speed. It was intriguing to him that Izuku had a father who trained him to use his quirk, which made Tenya wonder about the legality of such training. Perhaps Izuku's father was a hero. Izuku then mentioned that his father had always told him that using a quirk without being a hero was considered illegal unless permission was granted by a hero. He asked Tenya if he was a hero. Tenya confirmed this with enthusiasm, introducing himself as the turbo hero, 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐸. This revelation eased Izuku's concerns, allowing him to relax further. Izuku recognized Tenya as the speedster hero with engines in his arms and complimented him on his impressive abilities. Tenya appreciated the praise and became curious about Izuku's father, wondering what kind of hero trained him. Izuku hesitated, explaining that his father was quite secretive about his superhero identity. Tenya agreed to keep it confidential, and after a moment of consideration, Izuku leaned in to whisper a name into Tenya's ear, causing Tenya's eyes to widen in surprise. He was astonished to learn that Izuku was the child of such a well-known hero. Tenya expressed his surprise that Izuku's father had a family to care for, and he was pleased to know that the son of a pro hero had helped his younger brother. Izuku humbly dismissed the compliment, and Tenya's brother, Tensei, inquired about their parents' whereabouts. Izuku explained that his mother was shopping in 𝗟𝗯𝐻𝐴 and that his father was helping his sister train for self-defense. Tensei understood the need for family safety in a world with so many villains and offered to take Izuku home. However, Izuku declined, stating that he planned to stay out for a while longer, likely returning before sunset. Tensei then suggested that Izuku hang out with Tenya for a bit before he had to leave. Izuku was intrigued, while Tenya desperately tried to stop Tensei from embarrassing him. Tensei explained that Tenya often struggled to connect with other children, who teased him for being rule-abiding. Izuku sympathized with Tenya's situation and agreed to be his friend, stating that there was nothing wrong with following the rules. Tensei smiled at this, and while the two boys played, he took a moment to rest, feeling a bit winded from training Tenya. The boys engaged in various imaginative games, pretending the floor was lava, battling invisible villains, and even attempting a dance-off, which they both found challenging. After about 30 minutes of play, they settled down for a game of chopsticks. Izuku noticed that Tenya wore glasses and asked if they caused him headaches. Tenya, confused, replied that his glasses were meant to help him see better. Izuku reflected on his own vision issues, realizing that not everyone experienced the same problems. Tenya then asked if Izuku wore glasses due to seeing too well. Izuku explained that it was related to his quirk and sensory overload, requiring him to wear tinted glasses or cover his eyes with cloth to achieve normal vision. Tenya was fascinated by this and inquired about the strange force field Izuku had created. Izuku confirmed that the doctor believed it was connected to his quirk. Tenya was excited and asked what Izuku called his quirk. Izuku shared that he had named it Limitless, which made Tenya cringe, though he kept his thoughts to himself. Curious about Tenya's own abilities, Izuku asked about the engines protruding from his legs, wondering if they were removable. Tenya clarified that they were mufflers, not engines, and admitted he had no idea if they could be taken out. He expressed concern about the potential pain and consequences of trying. Izuku then shared that he had a twin sister, but they weren't on good terms at the moment. When Tenya asked why, Izuku confessed he wasn't sure, explaining that it had started when he defended her from some unruly kids, and their communication had since dwindled to only when their parents were present. It honestly felt quite sad that things had turned out this way. Tenya was surprised by this revelation, feeling sympathy for the boy while continuing to sip his juice. He acknowledged that the other boy certainly had a tough time. At least he had a brother to look up to. Izuku expressed his struggles, mentioning how his classmates had divided opinions about him. The girls admired him for his looks, while the boys resented him for being able to defend his sister. Tenya reacted with concern, noting how cruel some people could be. Izuku shared that even when he helped his sister, she often turned against him, believing he acted out of pity. Tenya understood the predicament Izuku faced. If he didn't help his sister, their parents would question him, but if he did, his sister would be upset. Tenya advised that he would still assist his sister, recalling his brother's wisdom about the importance of helping others, even when it wasn't necessary. Izuku admired Tenya's brother for his insight. As they continued to play, Tensei received a call from his parents, instructing him to return home with his younger brother. They expressed their gratitude to Izuku before Tensei handed him a piece of paper, inviting him to reach out if he wanted to hang out again. Izuku thanked him appreciatively. The two brothers bowed their heads as they prepared to leave, with Izuku following suit. Upon arriving home, his mother greeted him at the door as he removed his jumper. She asked about his day at the park, and he excitedly shared that he had made a new friend named Tenya. His mother was pleased to hear this and informed him that their uncle Hisashi and cousin Mikumo would be visiting soon, prompting her to ask Izuku and his sister to tidy their rooms. Izuku handed his mother the note from Tenya's brother, and she attached it to the fridge to ensure it wouldn't be lost. She also planned to save the number on her phone, hoping to replace it later that week without discarding important information. She then asked Izuku for help with the dishes since the dishwasher wasn't functioning properly. He nodded and approached the sink, grabbing a tea towel to dry the dishes. Meanwhile, Izumi stood attentively in front of her father, who was taking a day off and appeared slightly puzzled by her demeanor. After taking a sip of water, Izumi began to speak. She expressed her gratitude for his support in her training over the past 4 years, acknowledging the importance of staying fit and being able to defend oneself. However, she had a deeper reason for her conversation. She reminded him of his past as the symbol of peace and the injury he sustained from a formidable villain, which could not be healed by conventional means. She believed it was in their best interest for her to inherit one for all, making her the 9th successor. Toshinori's eyes widened in surprise as he processed her request. He felt a wave of sadness wash over him as he explained that he didn't think she should inherit one for all. Silence enveloped the room as Izumi struggled to comprehend his words. Her heart raced, and a ringing sensation filled her ears as she questioned why he would deny her this opportunity. Her father, shrouded in shadow, tried to maintain a stoic demeanor as he explained that she was still young and had time to enjoy a normal childhood. He didn't want to burden her with the responsibilities that came with such power, even if he wished to pass it on. Izumi felt a mix of anger and heartbreak at being denied the chance to make a difference. She understood her father's concerns but couldn't shake the feeling of being insulted. Despite her hopes for his approval, tears streamed down her face as she retreated to her room, whispering to herself that she was not weak or helpless and that she could do good. Sitting at her desk, she grabbed a pencil and paper, beginning to sketch a small figure with round eyes and exposed teeth. This initial prototype would evolve into something much greater over the years. A few days later, the Yagi family stood outside the airport, holding a sign as they awaited their guests. Izumi questioned her mother about why they needed to pick them up instead of letting them take a cab. Her mother explained that it had been a while since her uncle had been in the country, and it would take time for him to readjust to life there. Izuku had thought his uncle was only visiting for a couple of days. However, he learned that Hisashi and Inko were also searching for a permanent home, as traveling the world could be exhausting over time. Holding onto his mother's hand, Izuku kept an eye on the gate, looking for a man around 5'10" with short green hair and glasses. It had been a while since he last saw Mikumo, so he focused on a few distinct features: midnight black hair and a resemblance to himself. What set them apart was Mikumo's unique condition, which gave him heterochromia, one eye red and the other purple. After about 30 minutes of waiting, Inko spotted someone in the distance. A boy in a comic book t-shirt walked alongside a man dressed in formal attire, complete with a buttoned shirt, breathes, and a blazer. The man sported a small green goatee and slicked back hair, reminiscent of a secret agent. Upon seeing his family, he removed his glasses and greeted them warmly. Hisashi and Inko engaged in conversation, catching up after years apart. Their discussion revolved around their lives and experiences. Hisashi had returned to Japan after working on an animated series based on his comic book, Humanity Unbound, a futuristic detective story exploring the implications of a society dependent on androids. Izuku had the chance to read the original comic run thanks to his uncle, but his true passion lay with superheroes. Still, he appreciated the story, even if it lingered in the back of his mind. Once they settled into the family car, Hisashi continued his conversation with 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐽. He inquired about their father's health, and 𝐒𝐮𝐽 reassured him that the hospital staff reported positive progress in his treatments, suggesting he might be discharged soon. As the adults spoke, Izuku turned to Mikumo, who eagerly shared stories about his adventures in America. He described a giant statue of a woman in robes holding a torch in New York City. Izuku listened intently, curious about the significance of the statue and its crown. Mikumo explained that while the torch did light up, it was primarily decorative. The conversation shifted to school life, where Mikumo noted that it was quite different from the old movies their grandfather used to show them. He mentioned that while bullies existed, they weren't the typical ones seen in films. Izuku asked about the use of Mikumo's quirk, to which Mikumo revealed that he could manipulate flames in winter to keep the classroom warm, but there had been an incident that led to restrictions on his powers. With a hint of embarrassment, he admitted to melting a car, which resulted in his father having to pay for the damages. Izuku found this revelation surprising, noting how intense Mikumo's quirk, disaster flames, was. This ability allowed him to control both fire and lava, a mutation stemming from his father's fire-breathing quirk. Although he struggled with the lava aspect, he had learned to manage his powers over time. Meanwhile, Izumi quietly sketched in her book, drawing what appeared to be a robot. Hisashi complimented her artwork, prompting her to downplay its significance. She shared that she hadn't yet decided on a name for the robot, feeling that the ones she had thought of weren't cool enough. After about an hour of driving, they arrived at the Yagi residence. Hisashi left his luggage in the car and entered the home with 𝐒𝐮𝐽 and Izuku. 𝐒𝐮𝐽 informed Hisashi that there was a guest bedroom available upstairs, while Mikumo could share a room with Izuku if he wished. Grateful for the arrangement, Hisashi promised to keep the guest room tidy. Once inside, Mikumo asked Izuku about possible activities during his stay. Izuku mentioned that they had video games, though they mostly collected dust. He suggested they could go to the park, but warned that it might not be peaceful. Curious, Mikumo asked about Katsuki, a friend of Izuku's who had become a source of trouble. Izuku explained that Katsuki had developed a superiority complex and often teased Izumi for not having a quirk, despite Izuku's attempts to intervene. Mikumo decided he was up for a walk, and Izuku agreed. After making their plans, Izuku approached his mother to inform her of their outing. She smiled and encouraged Izumi to join them outside. Izumi felt the warmth of the sun on her skin and let out a small sigh as she grabbed her sketchbook and headed outside. She muttered to herself about just wanting to go. Mikumo, following her lead, agreed as they left the house with the two boys. They made their way to the park, where the boys began to swing on the swing set while Izumi settled in the shade, sketching quietly. Mikumo, swinging lightly, turned to Izuku and asked about Katsuki. Izuku explained that Katsuki had an explosive quirk and was often a handful, but he was manageable. He noted that Katsuki had a tendency to shout a lot. Mikumo inquired about Katsuki's fighting skills, to which Izuku admitted that Katsuki struggled in battles against him, often getting caught in his barrier without needing to fight back. Mikumo was curious about Katsuki's background. Izuku revealed that Katsuki was the son of his mother's friend, Mitsuki, and expressed sympathy for Katsuki's father due to the challenging home environment. He considered Katsuki more of an acquaintance, while his best friend was Tenya, whom he had recently met and found enjoyable to be around despite their differences. As the boys chatted, 𝐾𝐮𝐭𝐻 approached Izumi with his friends, intending to tease her. He asked what she was sketching, emphasizing his usual taunts. Izumi responded with a hint of annoyance, and one of Katsuki's friends commented on her attitude, suggesting she had forgotten her place since her protective brother had been watching over her. Izumi retorted that she wasn't afraid of someone whose quirk was to have shark teeth. Mikumo intervened, approaching the group. Izuku, not far behind, remarked on Katsuki's presence, recalling a previous encounter where Katsuki had accidentally hurt himself during an attack. Katsuki scowled at Izuku, who introduced Mikumo as his cousin, explaining their family connection. Mikumo firmly asked Katsuki to leave Izumi alone, stating that she had endured enough trouble from him. Katsuki, with bravado, questioned Mikumo's authority and what trouble he could bring. Mikumo contemplated his options, realizing that using his quirk could lead to unwanted consequences. Instead, he decided to take a different approach, threatening to inform Katsuki's parents if he harmed Izumi. The other children laughed, but Katsuki froze, fear crossing his face as he imagined the repercussions of such an action. In a sudden outburst, Katsuki declared that they should leave and ran away, leaving his friends to follow. Mikumo smirked at the outcome, but Izumi felt a mix of emotions, her inferiority complex surfacing as she cursed herself for needing others to defend her. She muttered to herself, vowing that she wouldn't let this happen again. Later that day, the family returned home, enjoying a typical evening together. Days turned into weeks, and eventually, Hisashi and Mikumo moved out of the Yagi household, finding a place of their own. As time passed, Izumi became increasingly consumed by her insecurities. Isolated from her peers, she immersed herself in tinkering with machines, focusing intently on her inventions. In the corner of her room stood a crude, humanoid robot with exposed teeth and hollow eyes, which she had named Mekamaru. Years later, Toshinori sat on the couch, watching television as heavy rain fell outside. He received a call from an international number, curious about the potential scam. When he answered, he was surprised to hear David's voice, an old friend. They exchanged pleasantries, and Toshinori shared that family life had been eventful. David inquired about their children, and Toshinori confirmed that Izuku and Izumi were now 12 and preparing to start middle school. He expressed his astonishment at how quickly time had passed. David mentioned his own daughter, who was navigating her growth stages as a single father. Toshinori then shared that while Izuku was thriving and gaining popularity at school, Izumi had isolated herself due to her quirkless status, spending her time tinkering with machines instead. David was intrigued and asked what Izumi had been creating, prompting Toshinori to mention the robot named Mekamaru that he had seen in her room. Toshinori had not yet seen the invention move or function, but he wouldn't be surprised if it was operational soon. He reflected on how the inventor reminded him of his daughter and considered the implications of her creativity. Initially, he had worried that she might create something hazardous, but he realized that if she was determined to pursue her interests, his role was to support her in using her talents positively. His friends suggested offering Izumi the chance to attend 𝐼 for a few years, which made Toshinori blink in surprise. He was instructed to put Izumi on the phone so that the offer could be communicated directly. Following the request, he approached Izumi's room, where she was absorbed in a book about robotics. When he opened the door, her attention shifted to him. He informed her that someone was on the phone who might pique her interest. Curious, she took the phone, and her father stepped out to give her privacy. On the other end of the line, David Shield introduced himself as a friend of her father's and mentioned that he had heard about her knack for tinkering with machines. Izumi hesitated but admitted to her hobby, prompting David to explain that he oversaw classes on 𝐼 focused on creating equipment for heroes and other fields. Intrigued, Izumi listened as David asked her about her aspirations. She contemplated her longing to be a hero like her father, but without inheriting his powers, she questioned how she could fulfill that dream. Ultimately, she resolved to be a hero who could save others without relying on a quirk. David encouraged her to enhance her skills by coming to 𝐼, assuring her that her parents would be taken care of while she was there. He also mentioned that they could accommodate her middle school curriculum. Excited by the opportunity, Izumi agreed to the plan and returned the phone to her father. After Toshinori received the details from David, he shared the news with 𝐒𝐮𝐬 when she returned home. Her reaction was one of skepticism, questioning the wisdom of sending their daughter to an unfamiliar place in the ocean. Toshinori understood her concerns but urged her to consider the potential benefits for Izumi. He reassured her that if Izumi faced bullying for being quirkless, he would bring her back, citing David's daughter as an example of someone well cared for on the island. 𝐒𝐮𝐬 pondered the situation, weighing the pros and cons. Initially hesitant, she gradually recognized the valuable opportunities 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐽 could gain and ultimately agreed to the arrangement. After a few days, David arrived in Japan to see 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐽. Upon meeting him, 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐽 expressed her gratitude. David informed her that Melissa, his daughter, was eager to meet her. Before leaving, 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐽 embraced her parents tightly, promising to stay in touch. Inko called out for her to stay safe, while Toshinori reminded her to call occasionally. As the plane took off, 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐽 gazed out the window, lost in thought about her future and her brother. She vowed to prove her strength to Izuku, determined to show him that she was far more capable than he realized. 3 years later, 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐽 and Izuku were both around 15 and nearing the end of their middle school years. Izuku, now a student at semi-private academy, sat in his homeroom, struggling with his English textbook. He sighed, feeling frustrated with the homework. Tenya, a classmate, noticed his distress and inquired about it. Izuku admitted that the assignment was more tedious than challenging, to which Tenya related, sharing that he had to consult his brother for help with some of the vocabulary. They both appreciated that at least they were not dealing with medieval English texts. Can one imagine having to read some of those plays the teacher mentioned? Some classmates might find it challenging, including themselves. If one wanted to learn about a romance story that ended in tragedy, watching the various adaptations would suffice. However, Izuku believed that an adaptation could never replace the original, even if the original seemed dull. He felt that adaptations made things more engaging. Tenya expressed concern for Izuku's perspective. After the bell rang, students left their homerooms to head to their next class. Tenya and Izuku walked together, with Tenya slightly taller than Izuku. Tenya asked where Izuku hoped to pursue his hero career, sharing his ambition to join UA's hero program. Izuku mentioned hearing rumors online about potential changes to the program that might reduce the number of admitted students. Tenya reassured him that these were just rumors and suggested that the intention behind any changes would be to cultivate quality heroes rather than inflate numbers. Izuku considered attending Shiketsu for its hero program instead. Tenya, curious, inquired why he chose Shiketsu over UA, believing Izuku's talents would be better utilized at UA. Izuku explained that it was more than just growth, it was about the uniform colors. He emphasized that style was crucial to his appearance, pointing to his hair, and mentioned that darker uniforms suited him better than UA's gray. Tenya blinked in surprise, questioning if Izuku really chose Shiketsu solely for its uniform. Izuku confirmed that the uniform complemented his hair. Tenya suggested that UA could customize uniforms to fit individual preferences, recalling something his brother had mentioned about a new uniform policy encouraging customization. This piqued Izuku's interest, and he quickly decided on UA. After their conversation, the two continued through their school day, engaging in the usual routine of classes. Eventually, they finished the school day and walked home, discussing the day's events, including the weather, any villain attacks, and upcoming homework. Their day had gone well, and they parted ways at the train station. As Izuku walked home, he couldn't shake thoughts of his sister, 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐽. They hadn't had a proper conversation in years, and his concern for her grew with each passing day. He wondered if she was okay as he walked through a long tunnel. He reflected on the years that had passed, questioning whether she still harbored any resentment towards him. Suddenly, a loud clanging echoed behind him, and a manhole cover shot up, creating a dent in the tunnel ceiling. Turning around, Izuku saw a rising mass of sludge. Initially grossed out, he quickly realized it was a villain attempting to make trouble. The villain expressed delight at finding Izuku, intending to use him as a disguise. Izuku firmly rejected the idea, stating he was uncomfortable with the notion of losing control of his body. Annoyed, the villain leaped into the air, aiming to engulf Izuku. However, he soon realized something was amiss. He felt no contact with Izuku. Instead, he was being blocked by an invisible barrier surrounding Izuku. Confused, the villain questioned what was happening and why he couldn't reach Izuku. Izuku explained that his quirk allowed him to perform extraordinary feats. The barrier expanded, pushing the sludge villain against the tunnel wall. The villain struggled under the pressure, eventually losing consciousness as his form dissolved into a pool of sludge. Izuku remarked on the villain's unfortunate day, noting the irony of trying to take over his body only to end up defeated. Just then he heard his father's voice, who had emerged from the sewers, expressing relief that Izuku was safe. His father, in his hero persona, acknowledged Izuku's assistance in capturing the villain. Izuku reassured his father that he was fine and had managed to defend himself. His father explained that he had been pursuing the slippery villain after a robbery and appreciated Izuku's help. Izuku inquired how his father planned to contain the villain, given its slippery nature. His father, displaying quick thinking, grabbed 2 plastic bottles and began transferring the sludge into them, with Izuku assisting out of courtesy. After some effort, they successfully contained the villain, ensuring it could not escape. With the situation resolved, Izuku's father thanked him for his help and reminded him to return home to his mother without delay. His father leaped into the air, creating a gust of wind that fluttered Izuku's hair as he watched his father soar away, feeling a mix of pride and relief. He gazed up at the sky, watching as his father gradually faded from view before making his way back home. After a short while, Izuku arrived at his house, stepping through the front door and removing his shoes as he ventured further inside. He called out to his mother, announcing his return. She welcomed him back, inquiring about his day at school. Izuku replied that it was all right, mentioning that Tenya had been asking him about which school he wanted to attend to begin his journey as a hero. His mother asked if he had made a decision, and he shared that he had settled on UA, the same school his father had attended, believing it would be a good choice. She noted his confidence but reminded him not to let it cloud his judgment, emphasizing the importance of training if he wanted a chance to get into UA. Izuku acknowledged her advice, expressing his excitement about the prospect of getting in without any issues. She cautioned him that his father expected both him and Izumi to gain admission based on their own skills, should they choose to apply. After some time, Toshinori returned home from his day as a hero. Once inside, he reverted to his slimmer form, expressing his exhaustion. Izuku greeted him, surprised to see him home early, and asked if he had successfully delivered the villain to the authorities. Toshinori confirmed that the sludge villain they had apprehended was safely dropped off at the police station, destined for a specialized facility due to the nature of his quirk. Izuku expressed sympathy for the villain, despite his wrongdoing. Inko, noticing her husband, approached him and greeted him with a kiss on the cheek, expressing her relief at his safe return. She informed him that dinner would be ready in 20 minutes and suggested he change and wait at the table. He agreed and the family soon gathered around the table, enjoying the meal Inko had prepared while the stars twinkled in the night sky. Inko mentioned that Izuku was planning to take the UA entrance exam to join the hero course. Toshinori acknowledged his son's ambitious goal, sharing that he had heard from Nizu about changes to the exam that would make it more challenging. Izuku was curious about how his father knew this, and Toshinori revealed that he would be working at UA as a teacher, providing him with insider information. Izuku was excited about this revelation and asked if there was a specific reason for his father's new role. Toshinori explained that Nizu believed the hero students would benefit from having an experienced hero teach them the fundamentals of hero work, and he had a special assignment on the side. When Izuku pressed for details, Toshinori indicated that it was a secret for now but promised to share more later. Inko was surprised to learn that Izumi would be returning to Japan in 10 months, also planning to take the UA entrance exams, but for the support course. Izuku continued to eat, tuning out the conversation, while Toshinori turned his attention back to his son. He suggested that since there were 10 months until the exams, Izuku might want someone to help him stay in shape. He mentioned a good beach that would be perfect for strength training. Izuku was concerned about his father's hero duties, but Toshinori reassured him that they could adjust their plans as needed. He had even prepared a detailed guide to ensure Izuku's growth over the next 10 months. As Izuku read through the plan, he noted the strict schedule, including sleep, nutrition, and exercises, feeling apprehensive about cutting out sweets. Despite the daunting task ahead, he resolved to follow the plan. Toshinori encouraged him, expressing confidence in his progress. In a moment of excitement, he transformed into his muscular form, lifting Izuku into the air and giving him a playful noogie. Inko joined in the moment, laughing as Izuku, though slightly embarrassed, felt a surge of happiness. Over the next 10 months, Izuku diligently followed his father's training regimen, striving to achieve peak physical condition while balancing school and social life. There were challenging days when he felt exhausted, but he also felt a sense of unstoppable potential. With a refined quirk and a physique that inspired confidence, he brushed off any doubts and revealed his untapped strength. As the entrance exam approached, Izuku woke early on a Monday morning, dressed in his semi-private academy uniform, and made his way downstairs. He found his father ready for the day in a sharp black suit, sipping water. Toshinori turned to Izuku, acknowledging the culmination of 10 months of hard work. He complimented his son's broad shoulders and muscular build, noting that he looked capable of stepping into his shoes. Izuku humbly dismissed the praise, recognizing that he still had years ahead before he could truly take on that role. Izuku felt a swell of pride as his father expressed his admiration for the man he was becoming. His father mentioned his grandmother, something he rarely did, which surprised Izuku. He only knew that she had passed away under mysterious circumstances when his father was a teenager. Hearing his dad speak of Tashi filled Izuku with a sense of confidence. After finishing his drink, his father transformed into his muscular form and headed out the front door, reminding Izuku that his sister would be home soon and asking him to pick up some items for dinner. Izuku agreed, wishing his father well on his exams and remembering his father's cryptic advice about hero work being more than just defeating villains. With determination, he leaped into the air and made his way to the train station, where he met up with Tenya. Tenya expressed his excitement for the day ahead, and Izuku shared his curiosity about the trials they would face. Tenya mentioned trying to get hints from his brother, but he doubted that old knowledge would be useful. Izuku agreed, noting that if the exams were the same every year, it would make them predictable. They both hoped that UA would keep things interesting. As they conversed, a tall man approached them, his short hair giving him a sharp appearance. He interrupted their discussion with enthusiasm, excited to meet fellow applicants for UA. Izuku and Tenya were taken aback by his sudden presence, but the man quickly apologized for interrupting, explaining his eagerness to connect with others taking the entrance exam. Tenya reassured him that it was all right, and Inesa, the newcomer, shared his excitement about the recommendation exam he was taking. This revelation surprised Tenya, who asked who had recommended him. Inesa proudly stated that the Hero Association had sent a recommendation for him to UA, which impressed Tenya, who noted that even his brother hadn't offered him a recommendation. Intrigued, Izuku asked for Inesa's name, wanting to know the identity of his future classmate. Inesa introduced himself with enthusiasm, and Izuku reciprocated, expressing hope that they could all do their best. After the train arrived at their destination, the trio disembarked and continued their conversation, discussing their previous schools, family backgrounds, and aspirations for attending UA. Inesa was surprised to learn that Tenya was 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐷𝐻's younger brother, while Izuku explained that his father was a hero but he couldn't reveal his identity. Inesa shared that he wasn't born into a hero family but was determined to pursue a heroic career, which he felt was just as valid. They speculated about rumors regarding UA potentially reducing the number of first-year students, with Izuku noting that UA had the resources to operate as they wished. Inesa expressed concern about the already low acceptance rate becoming even lower, but Izuku countered that it meant only the strongest would be accepted. As they approached the school gates, Izuku spotted a girl with short, curly blonde hair and a determined gaze entering the school. It was Izumi. He paused, captivated, while Tenya and Inesa looked at him in confusion. When they asked if he was all right, Izuku explained that he had seen something that piqued his interest. Inesa decided to head to his designated area, wishing them luck. Izuku and Tenya entered the building, moving in the opposite direction, where they were instructed to begin the written portion of the entrance exam. Izuku found the questions easy, breezing through them while others struggled. However, he had to take the exam without his sunglasses due to restrictions. After about 30 minutes, Izuku approached the proctor, handing in his exam while others looked on in astonishment, except for a particular blonde boy in the background. Snipe, the proctor, eyed him suspiciously, reminding him that the exam was an hour and a half long and that he had time to review his answers. Izuku chuckled, assuring Snipe that he had no intention of cheating, especially in hero work, and remarked that the test had been too easy. He asked 𝐒𝐮𝐲 to convey his thanks to 𝐒𝐮𝐲 for the enjoyable experience. Returning to his area, Izuku noticed the other students gossiping about him, but 𝐒𝐮𝐲 quickly silenced them, reminding everyone that this was still an exam and that further chatter would lead to immediate failure. Another hour passed before 𝐒𝐮𝐲 collected all the test papers, signaling the end of the written portion. After completing his collecting, 𝐒𝐮𝐲 exited the room, allowing present Mike to take center stage and prepare for the exam orientation for the practical portion. He began his presentation with enthusiasm, introducing himself as the school DJ and attempting to engage the students with dramatic gestures and dance moves. However, the room remained silent, with no response from the candidates. Undeterred, he shifted to the main topic, explaining how the practical exam would unfold. He informed the students that they would participate in 10-minute mock battles in vibrant, urban settings. After his introduction, they would be directed to their designated battle stations. Despite his efforts to energize the atmosphere, the silence persisted, prompting present Mike to express his disappointment at the lack of enthusiasm from the students. 𝐼𝐻𝐬 examined the applicant card he received, noticing the various numbers and realizing they were being separated from their friends, which he considered a clever strategy. Izuku acknowledged this, expressing confidence that they would perform well despite not being able to team up. Present Mike continued, detailing the types of enemies they would face, each assigned different point values based on difficulty. He emphasized the importance of maintaining a heroic spirit during the battles, warning against causing injury to fellow applicants. He mentioned a fourth type of villain, which was worth 0 points, piquing Izuku's curiosity. After concluding his presentation, present Mike shared a piece of wisdom, quoting Napoleon Bonaparte about overcoming life's challenges, and encouraged the students to strive for greatness. While the others looked on silently, Izuku leaned back in his chair, feeling confident without needing the extra encouragement. Following the presentation, the students were escorted to their battle centers. Izuku found himself in Battle Center B, while 𝐼𝐻𝐬 was assigned to Battle Center C. Dressed in a black 𝐵LNDFLD, a gray bomber jacket, jeans, and black sneakers, he leaned against the wall, observing the other applicants. He noted that many of them appeared to be formidable competitors, even if he couldn't discern their quirks at first glance. As he contemplated the nature of hero work, a soft voice interrupted his thoughts. A young girl with auburn brown hair and large, round eyes approached him with concern, asking if he was all right and expressing her worries about his 𝐵LNDFLD. Izuku, leaning closer, commented on her round face, likening it to a marshmallow, which surprised her. She questioned how he could see her, and he explained that he wore the 𝐵LNDFLD to filter the overwhelming information his eyes provided. The girl apologized for her assumptions, and they engaged in a light conversation about her oversized jacket, which her father had bought for her with the hope that she would grow into it. They exchanged playful banter, with Izuku noting that she might be mistaken for someone older due to his white hair. Suddenly, a loud voice interrupted their conversation, capturing the attention of all participants. Present Mike stood on a tall pillar, urging them to start the exam without hesitation. While some students remained confused, Izuku noticed the entrance to the battle center had opened quietly. Seizing the opportunity, he dashed inside, prompting the other students to scramble after him, eager to join the action. As they entered, they were met with the sight of piles of defeated robots, each marked with different numbers. Ahead, Izuku stood over his latest conquest, a smile on his face as he prepared for the challenges that lay ahead. The total point count had reached 37, prompting the remaining contestants to rush through the battle center in search of any lingering robots. Among them was the brown-haired girl from earlier, who made a commendable effort. As the point totals climbed closer to 50, some contestants began to panic, fearing they would fall behind, while others grew overconfident, feeling satisfied with their scores. The teachers observed from the observation room, each offering insights into the applicant's skills. The principal, 𝐒𝐻𝐬, shared his thoughts, noting that the examinees seemed unaware of the number and locations of the villains. They had limited time to cover a vast area and eliminate every target. Some contestants employed information-gathering abilities to strategize, while others relied on speed to outpace their peers. Remaining calm under pressure was a significant advantage, as was raw power and combat ability. The most successful students combined these tactics, earning the highest scores. Midnight, a tall woman with dark hair, commented on the promising nature of this year's group. 𝐼𝐻𝐼𝐴 agreed, stating that this year's batch was far more intriguing than the last. Snipe then shared his observations about Izuku, revealing that one participant had completed the written portion of the exam in just over 30 minutes. The other teachers were taken aback. Such a feat seemed impossible. 𝗟𝗏𝐿 expressed skepticism, pointing out that the exam was designed to take nearly an hour and a half. Snipe insisted it was true, mentioning that 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐃 had reviewed Izuku's test and found perfect scores in all areas. He noted that Izuku had referred to the exam as a side quest, which intrigued the teachers. They had never encountered a student who would describe 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐃's test in such a manner, raising concerns about Izuku's potential. 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐃 reassured everyone, stating that it was amusing to hear someone call his test a side quest. He emphasized that while acing the written test was impressive, actions revealed a person's true character. He was eager to see how the students would respond when the real test began. With the push of a button, rumbling sounds filled the battle centers, accompanied by distant explosions. The applicants turned toward the source, a wave of fear washing over them as they beheld the formidable figure of the Zero-Pointer, a giant robot. Many contestants fled from the villain, scrambling through the crowds while still searching for more robots to earn points. However, Izuku remained calm, observing the chaos around him. He recognized this as the obstacle President Mike had mentioned and found it intriguing. As he walked toward the giant robot, the girl from before rushed past him, stopping to urge him to escape. Izuku calmly declined, expressing his intention to take down the robot. The girl was incredulous, warning him that the Zero-Pointer would crush him and that even she couldn't stop it with her quirk. Izuku, however, was confident and prepared to demonstrate his abilities. He began to form a large blue energy ball, increasing its size as the girl watched in surprise. He explained that he had never needed to amplify his attack before but felt it necessary for this challenge. Curious, the girl asked about the nature of his quirk. Izuku explained that he could manipulate the force of attraction into a physical attack. After condensing the energy ball, he struck a pose and aimed it at the Zero-Pointer, declaring its name simply as Blue. When he fired the shot, the robot began to break down, its internal components struggling against the immense force. As a large piece of the Zero-Pointer fell toward them, Izuku quickly grabbed the girl and leaped to safety just before it crashed to the ground. She was embarrassed by the sudden rescue but assured him she was fine. Izuku encouraged her to focus on finding more robots for points. Just then, a loud horn signaled the end of the exam, and the girl sighed in relief, grateful it was finally over. She expressed her thoughts on the challenge, noting that the robots hadn't been particularly troublesome. Izuku, however, felt differently, believing the experience could have been more challenging. They discussed their scores, with Izuku revealing he had earned 80 points while the girl estimated her score to be between 30 and 35. Impressed, she asked him to share more about his abilities. Izuku explained that he could manipulate gravity, detailing two functions, creating an anti-gravity field around himself and intensifying gravity within a designated area. She found his powers fascinating, eager to learn more about how they worked. The conversation continued as one student explained the nuances of their ability. They could affect gravity by simply touching a target, allowing them to manipulate it for as long as needed. For multiple targets, they could use their ability without contact, though it was limited by time. The other student found this information intriguing. As the UA entrance exam wrapped up, the cleanup operations began. After the exams, students were gradually led out of the school, each feeling the weight of uncertainty about their results. However, Izuku felt confident about his performance, believing he had achieved a good placement. During the remaining time at UA, Izuku engaged in conversation with a brown-haired girl, sharing details about his quirk. They exchanged names, and he learned that she was Ochako Uraraka. Once they left the UA campus, they parted ways. Izuku stopped to pick up some dinner before taking the train home. Upon entering his house, he noticed his sister at the dining room table, conversing with their mother, 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐃. When she noticed him, her expression shifted, while 𝐼𝐼𝐬 turned her attention to him. 𝐼𝐼𝐬 greeted him warmly and asked about the exam. Breaking out of his thoughts, Izuku replied that it had gone well and he felt confident about his score. 𝐼𝐼𝐬 shared that 𝐒𝐮𝐦𝐦 had also excelled in her tests, likely securing her place in the support course. Izuku mentioned he had picked up dinner, and 𝐼𝐼𝐬 expressed her gratitude, hoping it hadn't been too much trouble. He reassured her it was a quick trip. She then suggested he help 𝐒𝐮𝐦 with her luggage, which he agreed to do. Spotting her suitcase at the base of the stairs, Izuku carried it up, with 𝐒𝐮𝐦 following closely. He placed the suitcase on her bed and offered to see some of her belongings. However, instead of engaging in friendly conversation, 𝐒𝐮𝐦 adopted a cold demeanor, making it clear that their relationship had changed. She stated that just because she was back didn't mean they could easily talk, emphasizing that she wouldn't be treated as weaker due to his powerful quirk. She insisted on maintaining a distance, wanting to rest after her long flight, and closed the door behind her. Feeling a sense of loneliness, Izuku walked away from her room. Meanwhile, at UA, the teachers convened to discuss the selection of students for the hero course, as well as the general studies and support courses. 𝐒𝐮𝐦𝐬 addressed the group, highlighting the need to focus on quality over quantity in their hero program, proposing to accept only 20 students instead of 40. After careful consideration, the teachers began to share their thoughts on the applicants. Midnight noted the impressive capabilities of this year's candidates, while Snipe pointed out that Izuku Yagi stood out for his remarkable performance during the exams. He had scored the highest in combat points and earned significant rescue points, making him a strong candidate for the hero program. Tashinori, present in the room, felt a mix of pride and embarrassment regarding his son's behavior during the exams. Aizawa, however, voiced his concerns about Izuku's attitude, suggesting that he was too self-centered and lacked the qualities of a true hero. He proposed that they reconsider Izuku's acceptance. 𝐒𝐮𝐦 countered Aizawa's argument, reminding everyone that the purpose of the institution was to help students grow and develop. He acknowledged that while Izuku might be cocky, he still had time to mature. Vlad, who had overseen the recommendation exams, mentioned that 3 students had particularly impressed him: Shoto, Inesa, and Momo Yaoyorozu, all of whom had performed exceptionally well. The teachers agreed on these recommendations, leaving the discussion open for further suggestions for the remaining spots in the class. The meeting continued with various teachers proposing additional candidates, leading to lively debates about the best choices for the program. The outcome of the earlier discussion remained unknown, as Tashinori soon arrived home to find his family gathered around the dining room table, enjoying a home-cooked meal. 𝐼𝐼𝐬 greeted him warmly, expressing her happiness at his return. Tashinori thanked her, explaining that he had been delayed by 𝐒𝐮𝐦𝐬. 𝐼𝐼𝐬 reassured him that there was no rush and encouraged him to sit down and eat. Feeling hungry, Tashinori joined his family at the table. As they shared their meal, both parents eagerly asked 𝐒𝐮𝐦 about her time on 𝐼-Island. She calmly recounted her experiences, detailing the various inventions she had created. Just then, one of her inventions made its way down the stairs, making its debut. 𝐼𝐼𝐬 looked at the invention with curiosity and asked what it was. 𝐒𝐮𝐦 proudly introduced it as 𝐼𝐻𝐼𝐬, the latest version of her creation. 𝐼𝐼𝐬 reminded her to keep it from wandering off, to which 𝐒𝐮𝐦 assured her that she would. The family continued to enjoy their dinner, cherishing the moment as the evening passed. However, Izuku felt a lingering sense of loneliness. Despite the conversation with his sister, he sensed a distance between them that weighed heavily on his heart. This routine continued for some time until 2 letters arrived at their home, each sealed with the UA insignia. In a burst of excitement, 𝐼𝐼𝐬 called for Izuku and 𝐒𝐮𝐦, announcing the arrival of their test results from UA. 𝐒𝐮𝐦 quickly took her letter to her room, while Izuku hesitated, staring at his before his mother handed it to him. He sat at his desk, carefully opening the envelope to reveal a hologram projector. As he activated the device, an image of 𝐒𝐮𝐦 appeared, sitting at his desk and radiating authority despite his small stature. 𝐒𝐮𝐦 began to speak, introducing himself as the principal of the academy. He explained that while All Might typically address the recipients of these letters, he had taken an interest in Izuku after some discussions. Izuku felt a mix of nerves and anticipation as he listened. Nizu acknowledged Izuku's strength, attributing it to his father's influence, but also noted a hint of arrogance that needed to be tempered. He then delivered the good news. Izuku had excelled in both the written and practical tests, qualifying him for the UA Heroics program. Izuku felt a surge of joy at this announcement. After leaving his room, he met his mother and gave her a thumbs up, prompting her to embrace him in excitement. She expressed her disbelief and pride in his achievement, while Izuku reassured her that he would always be her son, no matter how much he grew. Meanwhile, Izumi sat in her room, a smile on her face as she read the congratulatory message indicating her acceptance into the support course. She felt a mix of emotions, determined to prepare herself not only to enhance her skills but also to create something that could prove her strength to her brother. Weeks passed, and Izuku admired himself in the mirror while wearing his new UA uniform. The school's updated uniform policy allowed students to customize their outfits, and Izuku's was primarily obsidian black with forest green accents. As he posed, he received a call from Tenya, who was on the train to UA. Tenya expressed concern over Izuku's absence at the station, reminding him that school started soon. Izuku reassured him that he would make it on time, playfully insisting he would arrive faster than Tenya. However, before Tenya could respond, Izuku hung up. As he exited the bathroom, Izuku grabbed his bag and headed to the front door, where his mother awaited him. She expressed her happiness about his chosen path but urged him to be careful. She shared her fears from when Toshinori first revealed his job, recalling the anxiety of potentially losing him. Izuku understood her worries and, instead of arguing, offered her a confident smile while adjusting his sunglasses. He promised her that he would stay safe, asserting that nothing could harm him. With that, he set off for UA, using his powers to travel effortlessly to the school's gates. He waited at the front for a while until he spotted Tenya running toward him. Waving at his friend, Tenya appeared puzzled by the situation. He expressed his surprise at Izuku's presence, to which Izuku explained that his quirk had made it easy for him to arrive. After a brief moment of silence, Tenya accepted this and the two of them walked into the main campus building. Izuku initiated a conversation with his longtime friend, wondering if 𝐒𝐻𝐬 would be in their class. Tenya replied that it was uncertain, noting that receiving a recommendation didn't guarantee admission into the hero course. Izuku expressed his hope that 𝐒𝐻𝐬 would join them, mentioning how much he liked the guy's energetic attitude, which he felt would motivate him. Tenya agreed, recalling how inspired he had been by 𝐒𝐻𝐬's efforts. As they continued discussing potential classmates, Tenya asked if they might encounter anyone stronger than themselves. Izuku acknowledged that it was certainly possible, as some individuals were bound to possess better abilities. However, he doubted that anyone could surpass him. Tenya expressed concern about Izuku's confidence, suggesting that his ego might be a bit inflated. Izuku defended himself, stating that his experiences had shown him to be stronger than those who looked down on him, and he would humble himself only when someone truly defeated him. Tenya hoped Izuku would keep his ego in check, reminding him that the teachers at UA would be different from those at 𝐒𝐮𝐬. They continued through the halls, checking various classrooms until they finally found their designated one, impressed by its size. Izuku commented on the impressive accommodations, while Tenya suggested they focus on entering the classroom. Upon opening the door, they were surprised to see only a few students present. Among them was a prestigious girl sitting at the back, a gloomy boy with dual-colored hair beside her, and a shorter boy with what appeared to be grapes on his head. Izuku noted the interesting mix of characters in the room. His gaze landed on Katsuki, who sat quietly, avoiding eye contact. Izuku, unable to resist, approached him, greeting him enthusiastically. Katsuki did not respond, turning away as Izuku continued to tease him about their past encounters. When Katsuki finally told him to go away, Izuku backed off, apologizing and expressing his curiosity about Tsubasa, who had seemingly disappeared. Katsuki dismissed the topic, preferring to return to his thoughts. Izuku, now acclimated to the classroom, took a seat behind Katsuki, gazing out the window as the sun shone brightly. As time passed, more students filled the classroom, each distinct in appearance. Some looked ordinary, while others had noticeable mutations, such as 6 arms or animal-like features. The atmosphere grew lively as students began to chat and connect. Izuku, wanting to appear cool, tried to adopt a mysterious demeanor, which left some students puzzled, except for Tenya and Ochako. Tenya and Ochako discussed Izuku's behavior, with Tenya explaining that Izuku often lacked discipline in school, though he retained information well. Ochako hoped Izuku would realize that the world didn't revolve around him, or he might find himself overwhelmed by the media. Tenya agreed, concluding their conversation. Suddenly, a yellow creature appeared in the corner of the room, revealing itself to be their teacher, who had emerged from a yellow sleeping bag. The teacher acknowledged the class's quietness upon his arrival, noting that it took them 8 seconds to settle down, which he deemed acceptable. The students reacted with shock and confusion, wondering who this unusual figure was. The teacher did not seem to notice the students' surprise. He introduced himself as Shota Aizawa, their instructor. The class was taken aback, struggling to process this information. Aizawa, eager to move forward, produced what appeared to be uniforms and instructed the students to change and head outside. Once outside, the class of 20 students formed a line in a 4x5 arrangement on the grounds, the sun shining brightly above them. Aizawa walked to the front, and the students were astonished that the man dressed entirely in black showed no signs of sweating. They speculated on how he managed to stay so composed. Their thoughts were interrupted as Aizawa explained the purpose of their gathering. He informed them that, contrary to their expectations of a typical first day, they would be conducting a Quirk assessment test to evaluate their abilities. Many students were bewildered by the idea of a test on their first day. Some attempted to rationalize it, while others, including a pink-skinned girl, expressed frustration at the prospect of missing orientation. Mina questioned the necessity of the Quirk assessment, voicing her concern about missing orientation. Aizawa responded that if they wished to reach the top, they could not afford to waste time on trivial ceremonies. He emphasized that at UA, he had the authority to run his class as he saw fit. As Aizawa continued, he pointed out that they had only taken standardized tests without utilizing their quirks in practical assessments. He criticized the education system for not recognizing individual differences, which hindered those with greater potential from excelling. He expressed confidence that one day, the Ministry of Education would understand this. Aizawa then tossed a softball to Izuku, who activated his quirk, causing the ball to hover momentarily before landing in his hand. Aizawa acknowledged Izuku's impressive performance on the entrance exam and inquired about his best throw distance in junior high. Izuku estimated it to be around 56 meters. Katsuki interjected, boasting that he had thrown 67 meters. Aizawa playfully challenged Katsuki, questioning whether he could have done better. This remark left Katsuki feeling both embarrassed and annoyed. Aizawa instructed them to use their quirks for the throw, emphasizing that anything was allowed as long as they remained within the designated area. Izuku, relieved that things were going smoothly, prepared to throw. He launched the ball into the air, using a repulsing blast to propel it further. The ball landed after traveling an impressive distance of 1,200 meters. Aizawa informed the class of their maximum capabilities, stressing the importance of understanding their potential as future heroes. The revelation left many students in awe, particularly as they realized that the class's quietest member possessed such extraordinary power. Katsuki, feeling challenged, was handed another ball and prepared to throw. With a small explosion, he sent the ball soaring into the sky, and it landed at a distance of 705 meters. Aizawa acknowledged Katsuki's effort, which left him momentarily stunned. Izuku offered encouragement, suggesting that Katsuki could soon reach his distance. This only served to frustrate Katsuki further. Aizawa clapped his hands to regain their attention, reminding them that they had 3 years to become heroes. He warned that those who finished last would face immediate expulsion, catching many students off guard. Despite their protests, Aizawa stood firm, reiterating that he had the authority to run the class as he deemed necessary. He challenged them to consider the unfairness of the world and the role of heroes in combating it. He urged them to push themselves beyond their limits, promising that UA would present numerous challenges over the next 3 years. Some students hesitated, while others remained unfazed, including Tenya, who calmly drank from his water bottle. 𝐼𝐼𝐬𝐽 declared that they were wasting time and that it was time to begin the trials. For the next hour, the students of Class 1A engaged in various assessments designed by 𝐼𝐼𝐬𝐽, including a 50-meter dash, side steps, grip strength tests, and long jumps. Each challenge that came Izuku's way seemed to be one he could overcome, quickly establishing himself as a well-rounded student. When the tests concluded, the results were displayed, revealing each student's designated spots. Unfortunately, Toru Hagakure found herself in last place. Despite her stealth abilities, she was still an average human. Expecting to be sent home due to her position, she prepared to leave, only for 𝐼𝐼𝐬𝐽 to stop her with his words. He explained that no one was going home. It was a tactic to ensure everyone gave their best effort during the tests. Most students were not pleased with this revelation, especially the weaker ones who had been anxious throughout the ordeal. Meanwhile, Izuku found humor in the reactions of those who were panicking. He acknowledged that it might have been a bit cruel and apologized, encouraging everyone to continue. 𝐼𝐼𝐬𝐽 then informed the class that they were done for the day and instructed them to pick up a syllabus in the classroom, reminding them to read it before the next morning. He emphasized that just because they had an easy day today did not mean they could slack off. Each of them was striving to become heroes, and if they did not improve from their current results, something was clearly amiss. He warned them that things would only get tougher when their actual training began. The class collectively acknowledged their teacher's words before heading off to their own activities, making their way home. Izuku and Ida walked together, discussing their thoughts on the test. Izuku expressed his boredom, suggesting that their new teacher had gone a bit easy on them. Ida questioned how he could think that, but Izuku explained that while the tests were meant to help them understand their limits, they could have been more challenging. Ida expressed concern about 𝐼𝐼𝐬𝐽's teaching style but trusted UA's reputation as the top program, noting that deception was not a good way to build trust. As they walked, Ochako approached them, excited to join their conversation. She introduced herself, and Izuku greeted her warmly, referring to her as Marshmallow Girl, which Ida found curious. They continued walking together, forming a new friendship. Their conversation shifted to the challenges they would face in the hero program, with Ochako expressing her worries about her physical strength and combat skills. Izuku tried to lighten the mood by asking about her favorite snack, leading to a friendly debate between them. Despite some playful disagreements, they parted ways amicably, pleased with their new friendship. When the next school day arrived, everyone went through the motions of high school life. While it felt similar to middle school, there were notable improvements, such as fancier classrooms, better cafeteria food, and competent staff. The highlight was a special subject designed for the hero program. In the distance, Toshinori, in his muscular form, rushed through the halls and entered the 1A classroom, announcing his arrival with enthusiasm. The students' eyes lit up at the sight of All Might, with one boy, Denki, exclaiming his disbelief that the hero was really their teacher. Ichiro added that this year would be amazing. Some students commented on All Might's retro outfit, dubbed his Silver Age costume, but he continued his introductory speech with excitement. He welcomed them to the most important class at UA High, emphasizing that they would learn the basics of being a pro and fighting for good. He promised that today's lesson would be intense, revealing a card labeled Battle, which energized the students, including Katsuki, who was particularly eager for the opportunity to challenge Izuku. All Might reminded them of an essential aspect of being a hero, looking good. Panels opened to reveal briefcases containing their hero costumes, designed based on their Quirk registration forms and requests submitted before school started. He instructed the students to change into their costumes and head to ground beta. Once there, All Might expressed his excitement at seeing them in their outfits, declaring that they were now heroes in training. As the students emerged from their changing rooms, Izuku stepped out, wearing a dark blue zip-up jacket with a high collar, matching slim-fit black breathes, and dark sneakers. Denki admired the shoes and inquired about their name. The other student responded that they were the 𝐼𝐼𝐽𝐽, noting their comfort and how they had become part of his hero costume. Denki expressed his surprise at the early release of the shoes, which were not set to launch for another month. The other student teased that sharing how he acquired them wouldn't be fair. Denki felt a twinge of jealousy, wondering why the cooler students always had the best gear. He then shifted the conversation to his own costume, which he explained was more about looking cool than anything else. He had forgotten to submit his specifications to the support department, so he had simply grabbed items from his closet. The other student recognized the style, suggesting it resembled merchandise from a concert. The student clarified that it was actually merchandise from an old band his father had supported, and he kept it because it looked appealing. He expressed a longing to have a hero costume as impressive as the other students. The conversation was interrupted by 𝐼𝐻𝐽𝐷, who announced it was time for combat training. Tenya raised his hand, asking if they would be conducting urban battles again in the fake city from their entrance exam. 𝐼𝐻𝐽𝐷 clarified that they would be advancing to a new level of training, explaining that while villain fights often occurred outside, many encounters with clever criminals took place indoors. He emphasized that this training would involve teams of heroes and villains engaging in battles within buildings. A girl named Tsuyu expressed concern about the advanced nature of the training. 𝐼𝐻𝐽𝐷 reassured the class that the best training came from real battlefield experience, reminding them that they would be facing actual opponents instead of just robots. After addressing several questions from the students, which ranged from concerns about expulsion to nonsensical inquiries, 𝐼𝐻𝐽𝐷 moved on to explain the scenario for the exercise. He detailed that the villains had hidden a nuclear missile in their hideout, and the heroes needed to either capture the villains or recover the weapon. The villains would win if they protected their payload or captured the heroes. Time was limited, and teams would be formed by drawing lots. Tenya expressed concern about the randomness of the team selection. Izuku quickly interjected, reminding Tenya of his brother's advice that pro-heroes often had to team up with others on the spot, regardless of their usual partners. This method would help them train effectively. After the students drew letters to form their teams, the combinations revealed some imbalances due to their quirks. Team A consisted of Izuku Yagi and Ochako Uraraka. Team B was Mizo Shoji and Shoto Todoroki. Team C included Minoru Mineta and Momo Yaoyorozu. Team D was Katsuki Bakugo and Tenya Ida. Team E had Mina Ishido and Yuga Aoyama. Team F was Rikido Sato and Koji Koda. Team G paired Denki Kaminari with Kyoka J.R.: Team H was Fumikage Tokoyami and Tsuyu Azui. Team I included Toru Hagakure and Masahiro Ojiro. And Team J was Hantasiro and Eijiro Kirishima. Izuku felt sympathy for some teams, noting the disparities in their abilities. He acknowledged that while some teams had strong quirks, others seemed mismatched. Despite this, he recognized the value of the random selection process. Once the teams were established, 𝐼𝐻𝐽𝐷 announced the first matchup, revealing that Team A would be the heroes and Team D the villains. The remaining students were directed to the monitoring room to observe the battle. As they left, Katsuki glared at Izuku, feeling a surge of determination to prove himself as the strongest. Meanwhile, Izuku remained oblivious to the tension, distracted by thoughts of snacks. After the students settled in the monitoring room, 𝐼𝐻𝐽𝐷 approached Tenya and Katsuki to provide additional instructions before joining the others. He reminded the villains to prepare, emphasizing that embodying villainy was crucial for success in the challenge. Thinking from the perspective of an evildoer, Tenya acknowledged the task at hand. He assured that if things escalated, he would intervene. As Tenya entered the building, Katsuki simmered with anger, motivating himself for what lay ahead. The two navigated the corridors of the mock structure, heading toward the simulated weapon, with Tenya leading the way and Katsuki trailing behind. Tenya expressed his discomfort with their alignment to criminal behavior, even if it was just training. Upon entering the room housing the fake weapon, Tenya knocked on it, checking its status. He remarked that this was the weapon they needed to protect, albeit a fake one. Katsuki's curiosity about Tenya's relationship with Yagi surfaced. Tenya explained that he and Yagi had been friends since childhood. He then inquired why Katsuki seemed perpetually angry at Yagi, noting how Katsuki reacted whenever Yagi outperformed him or even spoke to him. Katsuki remained silent, lost in thoughts about his longing to surpass Izuku. Meanwhile, Izuku and Ochako waited outside, anticipating 𝐼𝐻𝐽𝐷's signal. Ochako seized the moment to ask about Katsuki. Izuku described their relationship as complex, highlighting Katsuki's pride in his abilities. He shared how, after awakening his explosive quirk, he had been the center of attention until a charming, white-haired boy overshadowed him with superior skills. This led Izuku to strive for recognition, often resulting in embarrassment. Ochako was surprised to learn that Izuku had a twin sister, though their relationship had soured. Just as their conversation wrapped up, All Might's voice boomed through the speakers, announcing the start of the indoor combat training. Izuku and Ochako entered the building, while the other students observed from the monitoring room. All Might encouraged the remaining students to pay attention and think strategically. Izuku shared insights about Katsuki's abilities, advising that maintaining distance would be the best approach. He explained that Katsuki's quirk allowed him to create explosive sweat, making him dangerous in close quarters. However, if one kept their distance, they could gain the upper hand. Suddenly, Katsuki appeared, having left Tenya's side to confront Izuku and Ochako. He declared that it was time to settle their rivalry once and for all. Izuku, however, declined the challenge, suggesting that Katsuki should involve his teammate instead. Katsuki's frustration boiled over as he expressed his longing to prove himself and reclaim the spotlight, vowing to show everyone that he was the strongest. Ochako found Katsuki's outburst unsettling, while Izuku remained unfazed, focusing on the task at hand. He suggested that they split up to cover more ground, asking Ochako to search for the bomb while he kept Katsuki occupied. As Ochako dashed away, Izuku faced Katsuki, taunting him with a confident smile. Izuku remarked that he believed their levels were no longer comparable, calling Katsuki a small fish in a large pond. Katsuki, fueled by determination, ignited his hands with explosions, preparing to launch an attack. Instead of relying on his barrier, Izuku chose to evade, countering with a swift kick to Katsuki's midsection before stepping back with flair. Unfazed, Katsuki pressed on, engaging in a fierce battle, but Izuku, confident in his skills, deftly dodged each attack, using only physical maneuvers to defend himself. The interior of the building began to crumble around them, with walls collapsing due to Katsuki's explosive attacks and the impact of Izuku's kicks sending him flying. Their battle raged on, with Katsuki's fury intensifying with each passing moment. Izuku, now treating the fight with a lighthearted demeanor, moved gracefully as if he were dancing, effortlessly evading Katsuki's strikes while striking playful poses. This infuriated Katsuki, his face flushed with a deep crimson hue. He could not accept being toyed with like this. He was determined not to be anyone's plaything any longer. He declared that he would not allow Izuku to surpass him any longer. Izuku, unfazed, responded that it was too late for that. He assured Katsuki that as long as he continued to act this way, he would never reach Izuku's level. Katsuki's anger surged, feeling as if steam were rising from his head. He shouted for Izuku to silence himself. Noticing a faint glow from his gauntlets, Katsuki let out a wild laugh and aimed at Izuku, catching All Might's attention. Having seen the capabilities of Katsuki's support item before the exercise, All Might began to panic, fearing for Izuku's safety. Katsuki insisted that Izuku would be fine as long as he dodged. With a crazed grin, he slowly pulled the pin from his gauntlet, preparing to unleash a powerful explosion aimed directly at Izuku. However, Izuku merely smiled and raised his finger, a small blue orb forming at its tip. He released a blast toward Katsuki, the gravitational force drawing Katsuki's attack into the center of Izuku's own, absorbing it entirely. Katsuki's eyes widened in disbelief as he struggled to comprehend what had just happened, his body trembling in shock. Izuku took the opportunity to inform Katsuki that he had just demonstrated his true power and suggested that surrendering might be wise. Katsuki, still in disbelief, questioned how Izuku had survived the blast. Izuku explained that even without using his own attack, Katsuki would not have been able to hit him. Katsuki protested, but Izuku urged him to face reality, stating that his motivation to defeat Izuku would only get him so far. He warned that if Katsuki continued down this path, he would never even make it into the top 100. Feeling lectured, Katsuki grew frustrated and attempted a sneak attack, only for Izuku's infinity to protect him. Izuku reiterated that it was pointless to continue this way. Katsuki retorted, accusing Izuku of being arrogant and questioning how brave he would be without his powers. Izuku acknowledged the thought experiment but insisted that he had a competition to win. Meanwhile, Tenya was trying to reach Katsuki, startled by the explosion. He called out for a status report but received no response. Izuku, having taken the villain's earpiece, informed Tenya that his partner had been dealt with. Tenya was annoyed but determined not to lose the exercise. He resolved to embrace his villainous side to gain an advantage. Tenya declared that he would never give up the weapon, even with Katsuki captured. Izuku sighed, acknowledging that he was not the only one capable of defeating Tenya. After tossing the earpiece back to Katsuki, he contacted Ochako, asking if she had found the bomb. She confirmed she had and noted that Tenya was nearby, pretending to be a villain in a rather comical manner. Ochako assured Izuku that she could handle Tenya, revealing herself to him. As Tenya began his villainous act, he was suddenly weighed down, feeling as if gravity had intensified around him. Unable to move, he watched as Ochako walked past him, apologizing for not prolonging the fight, as time was limited. She then touched the weapon. In the monitoring room, the other students watched in astonishment at the display of abilities. All Might congratulated them, announcing that the indoor combat training had concluded and that the hero team had emerged victorious. As his voice echoed throughout the building, Katsuki felt a surge of irritation at the outcome, expressing his frustration at the result. Seeing him like this didn't exactly bring joy to Katsuki. It was somewhat amusing, but not enough to excuse the actions from his childhood, especially regarding how he treated Katsuki's sister. Katsuki scoffed, feeling a surge of frustration. He couldn't stand the thought of someone weaker looking down on him as if he were incapable of handling things himself. The other person pointed out that this was about Katsuki's ego not being able to accept help from someone he considered weaker. It was clear that there were deeper issues at play. Katsuki's anger flared as he insisted that she had looked down on him and should have known better than to cross him. The other person urged Katsuki to consider that she was simply showing compassion. They reminded him that they had been best friends until his quirk had changed everything. Katsuki was challenged to reflect on his actions and performance, realizing that a hero who couldn't collaborate with others was essentially doomed. The truth stung, but it was something he needed to confront. As All Might released him from his binds, Katsuki growled in frustration, still grappling with his emotions. As the four students stood still, All Might addressed the group, declaring that despite the results favoring the heroes, the MVP of the exercise was young Ida. Tenya gasped in surprise, as did Izuku, who felt his own performance had been significant. Tsuyu raised her hand, questioning why one of the heroes wasn't chosen instead. All Might acknowledged the question and invited guesses. Momo Yaoyorozu stepped forward with a thoughtful explanation. She articulated that while the heroes had won, Ida had truly embraced the challenge. Katsuki's personal grudge had clouded his judgment, leading to his capture. Yagi, while heroic, had faltered in his attempt to negotiate. Momo pointed out that in situations where lives were at stake, a hero should not taunt a villain. Izuku felt the need to defend himself, but Momo continued, explaining that Uraraka had taken her role seriously but had recklessly used her quirk without considering the consequences. All three had treated the exercise as just that, an exercise, while Ida had been fully prepared for his opponent, maintaining focus on his mission. All Might praised Momo for her insights, noting that while she had overlooked some details, her answer was largely correct. He emphasized the importance of starting with the basics and dedicating oneself to learning as the path to becoming a top hero. While the other heroes admired Momo's confidence, Izuku felt the sense of unease, sensing that he and Momo might not see eye to eye. He acknowledged her point about the exercise but couldn't shake the feeling of rivalry. All Might then encouraged the students to move on to the next match, urging them to reflect on everything they had seen and discussed. The students responded positively, and those who had completed the trial let out sighs of satisfaction, except for Katsuki, who remained lost in his thoughts, frustrated with himself for losing to Izuku. After the battle training, things calmed down for Class 1A. All the students participated in the training, quickly learning the hierarchy of power and the strengths of their quirks. Most agreed that Izuku stood out as the strongest among them. Despite his strength, Izuku possessed a charm that endeared him to his classmates and other students, leading to his growing popularity. However, not everyone was swept up in the admiration. Izuku found himself grappling with the attention, feeling his ego swell despite trying to dismiss it as nothing new. The media soon turned their focus on him, eager to hear about his experiences with 𝐼𝐻𝐬, who was a teacher at UA. When asked what it was like to work closely with 𝐼𝐻𝐬, Izuku responded enthusiastically, sharing that it had been a magnificent experience. He described 𝐼𝐻𝐬 as a big teddy bear, strong and muscular, yet cooler than many heroes he had seen on television. As the questions continued, Izuku was suddenly pulled away by Aizawa, who was dragging him from the spotlight. Initially indignant, Izuku calmed down upon realizing it was his teacher. Yagi was acting unusually serious, which puzzled his friend. Tenya, who had experience with the media, advised him to be cautious and to avoid speaking too freely. He warned Yagi that while his powers were impressive, he was not invincible, and a single mistake could lead to trouble. Yagi acknowledged the advice but admitted that controlling his ego would be challenging, especially with all the attention he was receiving from his classmates. Tenya encouraged him to focus on his actions rather than just his words. After being brought to the classroom, Izuku let out a heavy sigh, prompting Tenya to inquire about his mood. Izuku explained that Mr. Aizawa had just lectured him about managing his ego. Tenya expressed hope that Izuku would take the lesson seriously, but Izuku playfully wished for Tenya's support. Tenya reminded him that while confidence is important, excessive pride could lead to stagnation. Just then Mr. Aizawa entered the classroom, looking tired. The students quickly settled at their desks, eager to avoid his displeasure. Aizawa acknowledged their adherence to instructions and commended their efforts in the previous day's combat training. He specifically addressed Bakugo, urging him not to sulk over his loss. Then, Aizawa turned his attention to Yagi, reiterating the need for him to keep his ego in check, as his recent actions had been somewhat reckless. With that, Aizawa announced that their first task would determine their future. The students felt a wave of apprehension, which quickly faded when they realized it was merely about electing a class representative. This sparked a lively debate among the students, each believing they were the best candidate for the role. Izuku, feeling confident in his abilities, argued that strength should be a key factor in the decision. 𝐼𝐻𝐬 pointed out that strength alone shouldn't determine the representative, and Tenya emphasized that leadership requires the trust of the entire class. He proposed a democratic election to choose their leader. Some students saw through Tenya's intentions, sensing he wanted their votes for himself. Denki raised concerns about the effectiveness of the election, given their short time together. Aizawa, weary of the discussion, allowed them to proceed as they wished, provided they reached a decision before his nap was over. Although the democratic process quelled the chaos, the results left Tenya frustrated when lunch arrived. He couldn't believe he hadn't received enough votes. Izuku, trying to console him, admitted he hadn't received any votes either. Tenya expressed his longing for recognition, hoping to prove himself capable of leading a team. Ochako encouraged Tenya to stay positive, reminding him that he had still secured a deputy position. As the students continued their day, lessons proceeded as expected. Around 12:50 p.m., they returned to their homeroom, waiting for Aizawa to begin the next lesson. Aizawa announced that today's training would differ from their usual battle scenarios. Instead, they would engage in rescue training to prepare for real-life situations they might face as heroes, such as natural disasters and shipwrecks. The students were intrigued by the prospect, with some expressing excitement about the challenge ahead. Aizawa, however, was not pleased with their distraction and reminded them that their choice of attire for the exercise was entirely up to them. The students were buzzing with excitement about their costumes, but their instructor reminded them that they had yet to adjust to wearing them, which might hinder their abilities. This special training would take place at an off-campus facility, and they would be traveling there by bus. With that, the students began to prepare. As the instructor pressed a button on the remote in his pocket, panels in the wall slid open, revealing briefcases that contained their costumes. With permission granted, each student rose from their desks, collected their designated briefcases, and exited the classroom. After some time on the bus, the students arrived at the facility, with Izuku happily munching on snacks while gazing out the window. The journey took a while, but eventually, 𝐼𝐬𝐬 stood up to announce their arrival. The students were greeted by the hero known as the Space Hero, 13, whose voice was feminine, yet her costume did not reflect that. She began explaining the facility, revealing its name and leading them inside to showcase its various sections. The sheer size of the place left the students in awe. 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐽 exclaimed in surprise, comparing it to an amusement park. 13 explained that the facility was designed to prepare them for various disasters, naming it the Unforeseen Simulation Joint, or USJ for short. As the students absorbed this information, 𝐼𝐬𝐬 approached 13, inquiring about 𝐼𝐻𝐼𝐬𝐽's absence. 13 explained that 𝐼𝐻𝐼𝐬𝐽 had exhausted his powers while helping others on his way to school and was currently resting in the teacher's lounge. This revelation led 𝐼𝐬𝐬 to express his frustration, deeming 𝐼𝐻𝐼𝐬𝐽 irresponsible. However, he reassured the students that they would be fine with just the two of them and urged them to get started. 13 then took the opportunity to discuss the responsibilities of a rescue hero, emphasizing the potential dangers of misusing their powers. She reminded them that while their quirks were regulated, they could still be hazardous if not handled with care. She encouraged them to focus on using their abilities to save lives rather than to attack. After her presentation, the students felt motivated and eager to participate in the rescue exercise. 𝐼𝐬𝐬𝐽, having turned off his phone, announced that they could finally begin. He gestured toward the various wrecks, ready to lead them down the stairs for the lesson. However, as he did so, the lights above them dimmed. Izuku noticed a strange wormhole near the fountain and pointed it out to 𝐼𝐬𝐬𝐽. As 𝐼𝐬𝐬𝐽 turned to look, he saw the wormhole expanding and changing shape, with peculiar figures emerging from it. 𝐼𝐬𝐬𝐽 quickly instructed the students to stay together and protect themselves. The number of unusual individuals increased, each with features that defied normal human anatomy. Among them, two figures caught 𝐼𝐬𝐬𝐽's attention: a large, muscular creature with a beak and a young man covered in hands. 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐽, confused, questioned whether the training had started, thinking they were supposed to be rescuing people. 𝐼𝐬𝐬𝐽 intervened, warning him to stay back and clarifying that they were facing real villains. Izuku expressed excitement at the prospect of encountering actual villains, but 𝐼𝐬𝐬𝐽 reminded him that this was not the time for enthusiasm. As the last of the villains stepped out of the portal, it morphed into a humanoid shape. The villain began to speak, noting the absence of all might and expressing frustration over the situation. 𝐼𝐬𝐬𝐽, caught off guard by the mention of a schedule, focused on ensuring the safety of his students. Despite his efforts, some students were eager to join the fight, leading to a heated exchange among them. 𝐼𝐬𝐬𝐽 shouted for them to refrain from putting themselves in danger, but his attention was momentarily diverted by the argument. Meanwhile, the young man among the villains grew increasingly impatient, frustrated by 𝐼𝐻𝐼𝐽's absence and contemplating drastic measures to draw him out. As the villains advanced, the students were left bewildered by how such a breach of security could occur at UA. It seemed that something had disrupted the alarms, allowing this unexpected encounter to unfold. Momo questioned why the alarms were silent, and the hero replied that he was unsure. She wondered if the entire campus was under attack or if they were the only target. If the alarm sensors weren't triggered, it suggested that one of the villains had a quirk that concealed their presence. They had chosen this isolated facility strategically while a class was in session. Although they were foolish for trespassing, their planning indicated they had a clear objective. But what could it be? In that moment, various thoughts raced through the students' minds. They pondered their chances of survival and escape. Despite their fear, each student considered these questions. Meanwhile, 𝐼𝐬𝐬𝐽 stretched his limbs and began to approach the stairs. He instructed 13 to evacuate the students and alert the main campus. He speculated that if the villains could block their sensors, they might also be jamming regular communications. He then asked Kaminari to try using his quirk to contact the school. As Denki followed 𝐼𝐬𝐬𝐽's orders, Izuku hesitated, expressing concern about the teacher's decision. He pointed out that while 𝐼𝐬𝐬𝐽 could nullify the villain's quirks, his fighting style was not suited for prolonged group combat. 𝐼𝐮𝐬𝐽 acknowledged the truth in Izuku's words but insisted that he wouldn't send the students into a battle they had no reason to fight. He wanted to protect them from the horrors of combat and emphasized that a true hero must possess more than one skill. With that, he leaped toward the battlefield. Izuku, though initially skeptical, found himself gaining respect for 𝐼𝐮𝐬𝐽, seeing him as a reliable figure rather than just a grumpy teacher. Tamura Shigaraki was the young man behind the invasion at the USJ. Unknown to the public, he was anything but stable. Trained from a young age to harbor hatred for heroes, he was an enigma among villains. Unlike those who sought fame or fortune, his singular longing was the downfall of all might. Over the years, he had honed his control over the quirk, decay, and learned about the schemes of 𝐒𝐮𝐲𝐬, a charismatic and intelligent man with a cruel streak. He had also been cared for by a doctor who had worked with his 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐽 for decades, conducting twisted experiments. One such experiment resulted in a creature formed through manipulation of human anatomy. The doctor introduced the instant 𝐿𝐻𝐻𝐿, modified to be stronger than average individuals. Unlike the high-end 𝐿𝐻𝐻𝐿, which required extensive modification and time to create, the instant 𝐿𝐻𝐻𝐿s were easier to produce. The doctor explained that they could transform people into soldiers, though they were weaker in comparison to their more advanced counterparts. Tamura accepted this, knowing that the modified beings would need time to adjust to their new abilities. For now, the lesser 𝐿𝐻𝐻𝐿s would serve as his primary force. He resolved to have them convert everyone who came to them, as they would need all the strength possible to face the future heroes of the nation. As he watched his minions, the instant 𝐿𝐻𝐻𝐿s, being swiftly defeated by 𝐼𝐮𝐬𝐽, he acknowledged their shortcomings. They were far from perfect minions, and he wished their ability to think had been removed. If that were the case, they wouldn't have to worry about their quirks being disabled. The battle raged on, with 𝐼𝐮𝐬𝐽 fighting valiantly against the villains while the students of Class 1A rushed toward the exit. Izuku lingered behind, observing the fight and marveling at 𝐼𝐮𝐬𝐽's skills, contemplating the possibility of learning hand-to-hand combat from him. Suddenly, the wormhole villain appeared before them, declaring that there was no escape. The students halted, with 13 stepping forward, aiming her finger at the villain. Izuku considered using his power to pull the villain away but decided to hold back, hoping to gather information to better understand the situation. The villain introduced himself as a member of the League of Villains, explaining their impolite intrusion into the haven of justice. He noted that it was a fitting place for All Might, the symbol of peace, to meet his end, as he had been expected to be there that day. However, with no sign of him, the villain shrugged it off, stating that he still had a role to fulfill. Izuku's eyes widened as he began to grasp the unfolding situation. Just as he formulated a plan, Katsuki and Kirishima charged at the villain, combining their attacks in an attempt to stop him. However, their efforts seemed to have little effect. The villain complimented their school's reputation but warned them to be cautious, lest someone get hurt. 13 shouted for them to get out of the way. Kurogiri narrowed his eyes, anticipating the hero's actions, and spread his essence around them, threatening to scatter them across the facility to meet his comrades. As the villain unleashed his power, the students felt the overwhelming force pushing against them. While some managed to escape, others struggled to hold their ground. For Izuku, there was only one course of action. He created 2 small red orbs and launched them towards some of his classmates, using the power of repulsion to push them away from the villain's attack. Thanks to his quick thinking, Tsuyu and Minato were saved from the villain's scheme. However, as Izuku tried to prevent himself from being teleported, he discovered that his barrier was ineffective, and he suddenly found himself in the ruin zone. He surveyed his surroundings, realizing he had landed not far from the entrance of the USJ. He felt relieved, thinking it wouldn't be difficult to reunite with the others. But he pondered the villain's intentions. How did they plan to defeat his father? He doubted it would be with the army they had brought. If Mr. 𝐼𝐮𝐬𝐽 could handle them, then his father would surely prevail. He wondered if they had some sort of weapon or a powerful ally to tip the scales. Those questions could wait. Leaping off the building, he walked through the ruins, unconcerned about the small villains that charged at him upon his arrival. The outcome was predictable. He easily overpowered them. Observing the anatomy of the villains, he noticed a common theme: a hand mark ingrained in their skin. Was this the result of a quirk? Taking this detail into account, he continued his journey, eventually escaping the ruins and heading toward the stairs. Before proceeding, he glanced at Aizawa, who was in a precarious situation. His arm bore a wound, as if the skin was cracking and crumbling away. Despite his determination to fight, the arrival of the apparent, final boss changed the tide. The villain seized Aizawa by the hair and slammed his face into the concrete, causing a small puddle to form beneath him. The villain introduced himself as Nomu, a bioengineered being designed to counter the symbol of peace. Aizawa fought back, landing punches, but they had no effect. The creature effortlessly grabbed his arm and snapped it, leaving Aizawa gasping in pain. He realized that even without his quirk, this creature was incredibly strong, perhaps as strong as All Might. The creature attempted to finish Aizawa off, grabbing him by the head to slam it into the ground again. Just then, a blue orb shot past, pulling the creature away from Aizawa. Izuku had just arrived at the battle. He looked down at Aizawa, who was unable to move or lift his head. Even without direct eye contact, Aizawa sensed someone had come to help. Izuku acknowledged Aizawa's resilience, expressing surprise that the villains had resorted to using such a powerful creature against him. He reassured Aizawa that he would hold off the villains for as long as possible. Aizawa, weakly, urged him not to engage, but Izuku insisted that he was not helpless and would showcase what the next generation was capable of. Tamura Shigaraki, the villain, felt a sense of unease as he regarded Izuku. There was something familiar about the boy, a certain confidence reminiscent of All Might. Tamura dismissed Izuku's bravado, but his irritation grew when 𝐼𝐻𝐬, the portal villain, appeared beside him. 𝐼𝐻𝐬 reported that the rescue hero was incapacitated but that some students had escaped the facility. Tamura's frustration mounted as he scratched at his neck, blood trickling down. He expressed his anger at 𝐼𝐻𝐬 for failing to contain the situation, realizing that if pro-heroes arrived, their plan would be doomed. He had hoped to eliminate the symbol of peace that day, but perhaps targeting one of his children would suffice. Izuku, unfazed, revealed that All Might was his father, hoping to provoke Tamura. Tamura, skeptical, chose to ignore the claim. As the Nomu prepared to strike, its fist halted midair, unable to penetrate Izuku's barrier. Izuku felt a surge of confidence, knowing he could handle the situation. Raising his finger, a small blue orb began to form, and the boy launched it at the creature. The concentrated attack caused the Nomu to feel as if it were being pulled apart, losing an arm but narrowly escaping the rest of the blast. However, its arm quickly regenerated, returning to its original state. Izuku whistled loudly, impressed by the creature's regeneration capabilities. He acknowledged that they were in a bit of a stalemate but felt confident, stating that he could continue this fight indefinitely. Choosing to utilize his physical prowess, Izuku engaged in a battle with the Nomu, trading blows with the creature, though he realized he was doing minimal damage. Despite being able to block some attacks, he understood that this back and forth could not continue if he wanted to end the fight. The fist fight persisted for some time, with Izuku moving erratically, grabbing the Nomu's limbs and landing powerful kicks to its face. When this approach proved ineffective, he decided to use his blue orb to wear the creature down, leading to its continuous dismemberment, only for it to regenerate moments later. Izuku remarked on the Nomu's toughness, noting that it didn't seem to matter where he struck. A villain interjected, explaining that the Nomu possessed shock absorption, and the only way to hurt it was to slowly wear away at its flesh. This revelation puzzled Izuku, as he wondered why the villain would disclose such information. Nevertheless, it confirmed that the creature was anything but ordinary, and he smiled, ready to unleash his full power. Determined, he declared that he would have to hit the Nomu harder. Unbeknownst to the villain, Izuku had removed his blndfld, allowing him to dominate the fight and dodge the creature's strikes effortlessly. The villain noticed a change in the young man's demeanor, recognizing a familiar intensity in his eyes reminiscent of All Might. Anger surged within him as he watched this hero student overwhelm the Nomu. With newfound confidence, Izuku quickly formed both red and blue orbs, firing them in rapid succession at the Nomu. The creature was pushed back by the force of the red orb and dragged down by the blue, leaving it unable to counterattack. Spreading his arms, he combined the two orbs into one large red and blue orb, firing them in different directions before charging at the Nomu to engage in combat. He held off the creature for a moment, waiting for the orbs to get close enough before leaping away. Curious about the outcome of hitting the Nomu with both orbs simultaneously, he anticipated an impressive explosion. When the two orbs collided, the Nomu found itself caught in an endless push and pull. Izuku quickly noticed that the attacks were combining into a massive force, transforming into a bright purple glow. The Nomu struggled to regenerate from the attack, but it failed as the force erased its attempts. Slowly, the creature was consumed by the attack, leaving only its feet behind in a large crater where it once stood. Izuku was awed by the destructive capabilities of his combined attack, marveling at the result. He contemplated what to name this new technique, realizing that simply calling it purple didn't do it justice. Tamura, witnessing the Nomu's defeat, felt a surge of irritation at how easily it had been taken down by a boy. His frustration boiled over as he shouted in disbelief, expressing his anger at the loss of the Nomu. Izuku, unfazed, pointed out that if he could defeat the creature, then All Might would have no trouble doing the same. Tamura's anger escalated, and he began to scream, prompting Izuku to cover his ears. In a fit of rage, the villain attempted to rush at Izuku, hoping to use his quirk against him. However, their confrontation was interrupted by a loud crash at the entrance of the USJ. Both combatants turned to see the dust settling, revealing the sound of footsteps echoing throughout the complex. Although Izuku did not immediately recognize the newcomer, he felt a sense of hope upon hearing the familiar voice proclaiming their arrival. "Have no fear, students, because I am here," All Might declared with a stern expression. Tamura could only watch in panic, realizing that he was cornered and defeated. The atmosphere shifted dramatically with All Might's presence, as allies of justice cheered while enemies trembled at the sight of him. Tamura's frustration and worry mounted as he lamented the timing of All Might's arrival, feeling that his plan had unraveled. Kurojirai, standing beside Tamura, noticed his growing agitation and attempted to calm him. He urged Tamura not to falter, explaining that with the Nomu gone, they could not continue their assault and needed to retreat. Izuku, overhearing the villain's conversation, reacted with surprise at the mention of retreat. Izuku felt a mix of frustration and determination as he realized that the villains had escaped. Despite his efforts to stop them, Kurojirai had teleported Tamura away just before he could intervene. He lamented the missed opportunity to capture two troublesome foes, wishing he could have made a more impactful debut as a hero. As he adjusted his blndfld to lessen the overwhelming stimuli around him, he suddenly felt a strong presence approaching. He was lifted into the air and recognized the familiar voice of All Might, who expressed relief at seeing him unharmed. Izuku greeted All Might with a casual demeanor, assuring him that he was fine but expressing concern for the other students. All Might acknowledged this and instructed Izuku to regroup with the others while he took on the remaining villains. With renewed vigor, All Might dashed away, swiftly handling the villains in other areas of the U. The students watched in awe as he showcased his incredible strength, realizing the vast difference in power between them and their classmate Izuku, who had recently triumphed over a formidable opponent. Sato shared his thoughts with his classmates, suggesting that Izuku was like a monster in strength, akin to All Might. Siro questioned this label, reminding them that Izuku was their classmate. Sato reconsidered his choice of words, realizing he may have gone too far. As Izuku reached the top of the stairs, he overheard their conversation. Ochako informed him that Sato had referred to him as a monster, but Izuku took it in stride, understanding why they might think that. He reassured them that he was focused on becoming a hero. Just then, Tenya arrived, announcing his return and bringing reinforcements. Izuku welcomed him with a relaxed attitude, while Tenya inquired about the events that had transpired during his absence. Mina filled him in on the chaos, explaining how All Might had defeated the powerful Nomu. Tenya was astonished to learn of Izuku's unexpected strength and asked for details. Izuku downplayed the situation, expressing his satisfaction in thwarting the villainous invasion. When the police arrived, they quickly apprehended the defeated villains, counting a total of 72 minor offenders. Detective Naomasa Tsukachi ensured that all students were accounted for and unharmed, planning to return them to the main campus after their ordeal. Concerned for their teacher, Fuyu approached Tsukachi to inquire about Aizawa's condition. The detective promised to get updates from the rescue team monitoring Aizawa's status. He placed a call, putting it on speaker so the students could hear. The news was grave. Aizawa had sustained significant injuries, including fractures and potential vision impairment. The students felt a wave of worry for their teacher, who had risked everything for their safety. Tsukachi reassured them about 13's condition, stating that despite some injuries, 13 would recover. With a sense of relief, the students acknowledged the detective's words and prepared to return to campus. As Tsukachi continued his work, he noticed something peculiar about the villains being loaded onto the police buses, each marked with a handprint. He pondered why the size of the handprint resembled that of a child's. As he noted this observation in his notepad, he realized that not only did all the prints share the same characteristics, but some also bore faint burn marks. He wondered if this was the result of a quirk. Uncertain about its implications, he knew he needed to investigate further, including interrogating several captured villains for information. Meanwhile, two men stood in a laboratory, the soft hum of the overhead light accompanying their discussion as the full extent of Tamura's report became clear. Upon his return, they had hoped for success in his mission, but what they heard was perplexing, particularly for one of them. Tamura explained that the Nomu had been defeated by a child with ease. The boy had fought as if he were mocking the battle, displaying confidence that he would win. The purple ball of light he unleashed had dispatched the Nomu effortlessly, leaving only its feet behind. The doctor was alarmed by this revelation. A child with such power at UA was unexpected, and he regretted not discovering this sooner. It was evident that this child might rival, if not surpass, All Might. Curiosity compelled the doctor to inquire about the child's name. Tamura revealed that the boy claimed to be All Might's son. This revelation captured the attention of both men. Dr. Garaki recalled that All Might's true identity was Toshinori Yagi, and the idea of him having a family seemed improbable given his dedication to hero work. However, Garaki remembered encountering a boy with that last name years ago. Tamura's frustration was evident, but the other man reassured him that their mission had not been in vain. They had learned valuable information. The doctor was taken aback by his mentor's calm demeanor, having never witnessed such a side of him before. Was it a sign of aging or a response to his defeat by All Might? The man instructed Tamura to gather the elite villains, emphasizing the need for them to remain hidden in the shadows. He wanted Tamura to become a symbol of fear, a figure that would make the world tremble. After their conversation, Dr. Garaki and All for One discussed the failed operation they had meticulously planned. Garaki expressed concern that losing a high-end Nomu would not work in their favor. He noted that it took months to create such a powerful being, and the emergence of a child potentially stronger than All Might made it even more challenging to produce a Nomu capable of defeating him. All for One dismissed his worries, reminding him that their operation had yielded significant insights. They now knew that All Might's son was attending UA and possessed remarkable abilities. Garaki admitted his regret over not recognizing the boy's potential sooner. All for One suggested that the child's power might not be suitable for Tamura, leaving Garaki puzzled. He questioned why All for One wouldn't take the power for himself, believing it would be advantageous. All for One expressed intrigue in witnessing the child's abilities firsthand, admitting skepticism but considering the potential addition to his collection. Garaki noted that Tamura had not utilized his other power during the attack, raising questions about its purpose. All for One explained that the quirk was more than mere concealment and that he would elaborate later. He then assigned Garaki a task to create 10 Nomus within a month. Despite Garaki's protests about the impossibility of such a feat, All for One expressed confidence in Garaki's capabilities, emphasizing the need for Tamura to have a formidable army, one that transcended ordinary villains. Garaki eventually grasped the intent behind his MSDR's words and agreed to the plan. As they concluded their discussion, All for One instructed Garaki to give a candy apple to the girl they had captured, despite her compliance. He admitted feeling a sense of nostalgia when he looked into her eyes, reminiscent of his own youth. Meanwhile, Toshinori walked alongside Tsukachi through the halls of UA, heading to a secluded area. They were preparing for a meeting with other teachers to discuss the 𝐿𝐮𝐦𝐽 incident. Toshinori felt relief that he had managed to neutralize most of the threats that the students could not handle, knowing that without his intervention, the outcome could have been dire for the young heroes. Tsukachi spoke to his friend, expressing his concern. He reflected on how things might have turned out differently if he had been present during the incident, believing that he could have prevented the danger. His friend reassured him that what mattered most was that he managed to save them without overexerting himself. Tsukachi felt relief, knowing that he needed to preserve his strength to pass on One for All to his successor. Curious, his friend inquired if Tsukachi had found a successor yet. Tsukachi admitted that, despite the strength of his students, he was uncertain if any of them could truly handle the power of One for All. He explained that if their bodies weren't prepared, it could lead to negative consequences. His friend understood and suggested that Tsukachi consider passing the power to his son, who was already strong. However, Tsukachi had reservations about this idea. He worried that the immense responsibility of such power, combined with his son's existing quirk, could take a toll on his mind. He feared that if his son inherited the power, he might be seen as something other than human, leading to isolation and loneliness. Tsukachi wanted to spare his son from such a fate, hoping he could have someone by his side as a fellow member of the strongest. His friend acknowledged that it was ultimately Tsukachi's decision and expressed confidence that he would make the right choice. They then decided it was time to head to the meeting, as others were likely waiting for them. Tsukachi agreed and mentioned that he needed to speak with Tsukachi's son regarding a creature he had fought, asking him to bring his son to the station for questioning. Meanwhile, the students of Class 1A returned to the main campus, where Recovery Girl conducted psychological checkups. Fortunately, none of them suffered severe psychological issues, allowing them to head home and reunite with their worried parents. Izuku Yagi experienced a similar situation upon arriving home. Before that, he and Tenya, who had been released shortly after, walked home together along the familiar route they had taken since starting at UA. Izuku expressed surprise at the school giving them a few days off, while Tenya noted that the school was likely concerned about potential villain attacks. Izuku acknowledged their ability to handle themselves, but Tenya reminded him that it was primarily Izuku who had proven capable in such situations. Izuku appreciated the break, seeing it as a chance to relax. As they reached the train station, a voice called out to Izuku, prompting him to turn around. It was Denki Kaminari, who usually walked home alone. Tenya was surprised to see him approach. Izuku greeted Denki, and the three of them stood together as the sun began to set. Denki explained that he had an important question for Izuku, and after a brief discussion, Izuku and Tenya decided they had time to hear him out. They turned back to Denki, with Izuku flashing his usual cheerful grin. Denki asked if they could go somewhere to eat, as he had been hungry since lunch. Izuku, feeling the same, suggested heading to the sweet store, but Tenya reminded him that there were other food options. Denki mentioned a bakery with cookies, which excited Izuku. Following Denki's lead, they made their way to the bakery, where Izuku eagerly devoured the cookies he had bought. Tenya teased him about his appetite, suggesting he ask Sato, a classmate known for baking, to make some for him. Izuku was surprised to learn that Sato baked and decided he would ask for some sweets. As Izuku continued to enjoy his cookies, Tenya redirected the conversation back to Denki's original question. Denki expressed his curiosity about whether someone could gain strength similar to Izuku's through training. Izuku was puzzled by the question, wondering why Denki felt insecure about his own power. Denki explained that during the 𝐿𝐮𝐽 incident, he felt helpless while others fought bravely to protect him. All Denki did was shock a few villains, and even that wasn't enough to take one down. He wondered how he could call himself a member of the hero course if he couldn't defeat even a single villain. Tenya understood his feelings and reassured him that it wasn't impossible to improve. However, he cautioned that gaining strength similar to his own might be challenging unless Denki had exceptional genetics. Denki felt a twinge of sadness at this realization. Fortunately, Tenya noted that they didn't yet know if Denki had reached his limits, suggesting that training would be the best way to find out. Denki eagerly asked if Tenya could help him with that training. Tenya was surprised by the request but acknowledged that it could be beneficial. He mentioned that sometimes an outside perspective could help one learn more about their abilities. Denki inquired about Tenya's fighting style, wondering if he was experienced in close combat or preferred long-range techniques. Tenya explained that, due to his quirk, he leaned more toward long-range fighting. This sparked an idea in Denki's mind, and he felt hopeful that they could work together. Tenya mentioned he would be busy for a while but suggested they start their training after their break. Denki was thrilled and asked where they should meet, to which Tenya promised to provide the details at school, reminding Denki to relax and not be too HRD on himself since they were still young. After their conversation, Tenya and Denki returned to the train station, boarded the train, and parted ways to head home. Upon arriving, Izuku was met with a wave of concern from his mother, who enveloped him in a tight embrace. He reassured her that he was fine, despite the danger he had faced earlier, and asked her to ease up on the hug as he was running out of breath. 𝐒𝐮𝐬 expressed her worry after hearing from his father about the villain attack, relieved that her son was safe. After finally releasing him, 𝐒𝐮𝐬 was grateful for his safety, while Izumi, who was watching TV in another room, didn't acknowledge her brother's return. 𝐒𝐮𝐬 then asked Izumi to help with dinner, explaining that Izuku needed time to recover from his encounter. With a reluctant sigh, Izumi agreed, while Izuku retreated to his room to relax. Later, as dinner was prepared, the family gathered to eat just as Toshinori arrived home. He apologized for being late, explaining that a meeting with the school had been exhausting. 𝐒𝐮𝐬 expressed her relief at his return, and Toshinori noted that the threats he faced paled in comparison to what Izuku had encountered, praising his son for single-handedly stopping the threat and saving Aizawa's life. 𝐒𝐮𝐬 beamed with pride, but Izumi felt overshadowed by her brother's achievements, her irritation growing as she watched him receive praise. Izumi muttered to herself about Izuku being the favorite child, prompting 𝐒𝐮𝐬 to ask if she had said something. Izumi brushed it off, claiming she was just talking to herself and took her dish to the kitchen, declining seconds. Toshinori reminded her not to stay up too late, concerned about her appearance. Izuku watched as his sister left the table, feeling a mix of concern and distraction from the meal. He couldn't shake the worry about her feelings. Before he could dwell on it, Toshinori reminded Izuku that he needed to accompany him to the police station the next day for questions about the incident at the USJ. Izuku agreed, understanding the importance of recalling details, and asked what time they would leave. Toshinori mentioned first thing in the morning, and Izuku confirmed he would wear casual clothes. The next morning, Izuku followed his father to the police station, impressed by the size of the police force as they walked past officers at work. They entered an office where Detective Naomasa Tsukachi was on the phone. After finishing his call, Tsukachi greeted Toshinori and acknowledged Izuku, introducing himself. He explained that he would be asking Izuku some questions in the interrogation room. Izuku followed the detective into the room and sat across from him as Tsukachi set up a tape recorder. Toshinori observed from the observation room, noticing the presence of two individuals from the Hero Public Safety Commission, which puzzled him. He wondered why they were involved in a standard interrogation. Tsukachi began the questioning, asking Izuku to state his name, age, and occupation. Izuku introduced himself as Izuku Yagi, 15 years old, and a student. The following day, a series of questions regarding the USJ incident were posed. The atmosphere was calm as Izuku prepared to recount his experience. He began by explaining that before arriving at the USJ, Mr. Aizawa had informed them they would be conducting rescue exercises at an off-campus facility. After changing into their costumes, they boarded a bus and met 13 upon arrival. Just as they were about to start the exercise, a portal suddenly appeared at the center of the USJ. Chaos ensued when a villain, shrouded in mist, attempted to scatter everyone, making it easier for the other villains to attack. Unfortunately, Izuku found himself teleported to the ruin zone, where he had to confront the villains before making his way back. As he continued, he described how he tried to return to the entrance after defeating some villains, only to witness Aizawa engaged in a one-sided battle with a peculiar creature resembling a bird. This creature, referred to as Nomu, was said to have been designed to defeat his father. However, it didn't take long for Aizawa to gain the upper hand. Izuku described the Nomu as a large, muscular being with a beak-like mouth and sharp teeth, its brain exposed. When asked how he managed to defeat the Nomu, he admitted it was somewhat accidental. While experimenting with his powers during the fight, he inadvertently discovered a move that unleashed overwhelming force, leading to the creature's swift defeat. After the interrogation, Izuku returned to his father, where he encountered two representatives from the Hero Public Safety Commission. His father introduced them, explaining that one was the president and the other, Yakumaru, was her associate. The president expressed her admiration for Izuku's accomplishments, noting that defeating a foe on par with his father at such a young age was remarkable. Izuku felt a sense of pride but also concern for Yakumaru, wondering if he was managing his workload. The president then posed a significant question about whether Izuku felt he was fully utilizing his abilities at school. Although he acknowledged the importance of education, she suggested that with his potential, he could achieve even more. This made Toshinori uneasy, as he sensed the underlying implications of her inquiry. The president proposed that Izuku could skip the traditional process and obtain his hero license immediately, but with the condition that he would work for the Hero Public Safety Commission as one of their heroes. Izuku considered the offer but ultimately declined, expressing his longing to earn his license through hard work rather than through a deal. The president left, disappointed but leaving the door open for future discussions. As they departed the police station, Toshinori and Izuku reflected on the encounter. Izuku found the president intriguing, while Toshinori admitted he had yet to understand her fully. They speculated that the representatives were likely there to ensure that the situation did not escalate further after the USJ incident. With their conversation winding down, they decided it was time to head home and enjoy the break. However, the days passed quickly, and upon returning to school, Izuku found himself bored, distracted by his classmates discussing the media attention they had received. News reports highlighted how the League of Villains had been effortlessly defeated, leading many to view them as a joke. Despite this, the students of Class 1A were excited about the newfound attention. Hagakure enthusiastically asked her classmates if they had seen the news, thrilled that they had received a few seconds of screen time, even if she felt overlooked. Ojiro commented on her concerns, noting that it was hard to stand out when one was just gloves. Their discussions revolved around the fame they might gain from the incident, marveling at how a single event had made them the talk of the town. However, 𝐾𝐿 interjected, pointing out that the media was more interested in the event itself rather than the individuals involved. The media's primary focus was on the hero course that produced professional heroes, which had recently faced an attack. Jairu expressed a valid point, and Siro agreed, noting that they were more of a topic of discussion than true celebrities. Sato chimed in, pondering what might have happened if they hadn't managed to fend off the villains. As some students began to share their thoughts on the situation, Izuku gazed out the window, feeling a sense of boredom. Suddenly, the door opened, drawing his attention. Aizawa entered, his body wrapped in bandages, his face obscured due to the injuries he had suffered. This sight caused several students to react in alarm. Mr. Aizawa's presence prompted a chorus of concerned exclamations from the class. In his typical monotone voice, he greeted them, stating it was morning. As he stepped further into the classroom, the students expressed their worry, with Ijiro being the first to ask about his well-being. Aizawa responded that his condition was not important. What truly mattered was that their battle was not yet over. He reminded them of an upcoming event that would significantly impact their futures. The UA Sports Festival was about to commence.